This is the Sons of UCF podcast, your place for UCF sports talk year-round. Now, here is Adam and Mike.
Hey there, welcome back to the 111th edition of the Sons of UCF show. My name is Adam, and as always, I've got UCF Mike with me. Mike, welcome back. How are you, buddy?
Yo, what's going on, man? I am doing well.
Glad.
Pumped up for this episode, just like always.
Yeah, you sound jacked up. I can't wait to get into it. We got a lot of stuff to talk about here tonight, Mike. It's obviously a bit of a dead week, but we've got Cruton. There's Cruton going on out there. We'll talk about some Cruton. We'll talk about UCF losing an offensive coach for the second straight off season. Men's hoops keeps getting delayed. We'll do some fill in the blanks. We've got some picks. We've got some UCF observations. We've got Cal of the Week as always. I'm not sure if you guys have heard this yet, but Mackenzie Milton is transferring. We'll get into that too. And Mike, the breaking news. I don't have the sounder ready. And then Mike, probably the bigger news is we've got a bowl game to play now. We've got an opponent. So we'll get into all of that here on the show. But before we do any of that, make sure you do us a couple of favors. First off, if you're listening to us for the first time, thanks for doing that. Make sure you hit subscribe on the little app situation you are listening to us on. If that's Apple, if that's Spotify, it doesn't matter. We're on them all. Subscribe. If you want to drop a little 5-star rating, we won't be mad at you for that either. And make sure you find us on all of our social media stuff. Just search Sons of UCF on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Odds are pretty good. You will find us lurking around somewhere in your socials, Mike. But let's get social first off with the bowl game stuff. So we knew a bowl game was in reach. We knew the Boca Bowl was it. We were promised a quote-unquote likely ACC opponent. Turns out not so likely. And instead, we will have the 10-1 BYU Cougars making the trek on down to the roofclaim.com, ironic, Boca Bowl to face the Knights, Mike. So first things first, your thoughts on the matchup. Are you good with BYU and not a quote-unquote likely ACC opponent?
I think this worked out as well as it possibly could have.
Okay.
We were looking at who? Virginia, Boston College, maybe Pitt. We talked last week how we would all like to play Pitt again because we have unfinished business with them. Some of these other ACC schools, nobody really got excited about. We knew we were not going to be playing Miami. Definitely probably we're not going to be playing Florida State. I don't think they're even going to a bowl. So it was these middle-tier ACC schools. None of them are ranked. None of them, if we beat them this year, I don't know how much credit we get for them. And so I think BYU is a great opponent for us. They're ranked right now in the top 20, I think number 15 right now, right?
Yes.
They have a quarterback that's considered by many as a first-round pick, maybe a top 10 pick.
Yes.
We have some history with them. We played them twice. We won one, we lost one, so it's a rubber match there again. So I like the matchup. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't know what people would be complaining about.
Agree. Yeah, I think the ACC, the likely ACC opponent thing really kind of took a hit. Pitt decided they were not going to play in a bowl. Virginia decided they were not going to play in a bowl. Boston College decided they were not going to play in a bowl. That left us with Virginia Tech as an option. And then obviously with the slate of games this weekend, Miami, North Carolina were both probably out. To your point, FSU was not going to, I guess if they wanted to go to the Boca Bowl, I'm sure Boca would have had them, but I don't know if that was something they wanted to do. So it looked like our options were dwindling at some point on Saturday or Sunday. We were waiting to see if Virginia Tech wanted to play. That was kind of where the rumors were, is the Virginia Tech players were going to take a poll to see if they actually wanted to go to a bowl. So it could have been a lot worse. And so BYU steps in, Mike, and they are, like you said, they're a quality team. They're a 10-1 team. We'll get into their schedule here in a little bit. They're a 10-1 team. They're a ranked team, and let's not forget, Mike. Everybody this season has been talking about them as sort of the anti-UCF, right? They were the quote unquote group of 5 school that was doing it the right way. They were playing hard. They were keeping their mouth shut. They were just beating opponents, and so ironically enough, ESPN. The E stands for entertainment, and they've put together the anti-UCF versus the real UCF. I guess, to your point, you can't get much better than that.
Right. I was scared that after all the ACC teams were backing out, that we would get dumped in maybe with a Sun Belt team or a Conference USA team. Typically, that's what the Boca Bowl gives you, is one of these G5 schools. And we could have ended up with, like last year we played Marshall. This year could have been like a Georgia Southern or a Liberty or a school like that. A team that none of the fan base would have been excited to play. a team that if we lose, it knocks us down another peg in the eyes of the nation among G5 schools. So I think we actually have more to gain than we have to lose in this game. I mean, we're going to be the underdog. BYU's had a very good year. I mean, you want to talk about who they played? Okay, but they've only lost one game, and they only had 2 days to prepare for that game.
Mm-hmm.
So against an undefeated team, they've had a good season. They've had a very good season, and I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I mean, you talk about their offense and our offense. People are going to be wanting to watch this game outside of the playoff game and the P6, the New Year's 6 games. I think this is one of the most exciting games you can put together.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you some reasons. I'm gonna go Home Alone style here and give you some reasons why this is exciting. So, like I said, this is the anti-UCF versus the UCF matchup, right? This is a chance for us to reclaim the sort of the top spot. Everyone's all over Coastal Carolina this year, and BYU and Cincinnati, and rightfully so. They're all having great years. But how quickly the media and the national folks have forgotten that UCF paved this way after everything they've gone through in the 17 and 18 seasons, right? So, now all of a sudden it's our chance to kind of reclaim our spot, to say, hey, everybody, don't forget about us. Yeah, we've had a quote unquote down year in the minds of some, but this is a chance to make sure our name gets back out there, and it shows everybody, who we are, and that we are that group of 5 school. We were the ones that kind of paved the way for everybody else. So for those who may have forgotten us, gives us a chance to give them a reminder. 2, it gives Dylan Gabriel an opportunity. Listen, we're going to talk about Mackenzie Milton in a second. It's no secret he's transferred. It's no secret that obviously Mackenzie's perspective on it was he was leaving to A, give Dylan a shot to play, but B, also play on his own. But so this is now firmly Dylan's team. And let's be honest, Mike, there are people out there who think that this is the wrong decision. They think that, maybe Dylan should have stepped aside for a season, let Mackenzie have one final run with UCF. And so there are probably a handful of people out there, whether they want to admit it or not, that maybe are not sold on Dylan, and they're not sure that he's the guy, and they're clamoring for Mackenzie. You know what? If he goes out against the BYU team that's, played pretty well all year, hasn't given up really a ton of points. They had a couple games. I think the most points they've given up all season long, let me look quickly, is 26, is the most points they've given up all year. So if he goes out there and lights up a BYU team, I mean, that's a quick silencer for everybody, right? That's a hey, I can put this team on my back. I am the quarterback for this team, and I've got this thing going forward, and we're going to be just fine. And then D, this is the Josh Heupel game, right? Everyone's been talking about Heupel, and can he win the big one? Can he win the close one? Can he beat a big team? He's getting a little bit of flack for the Mackenzie stuff, right? Why did you do this? Maybe you should have kept him. Obviously, all of us, you and me included, have talked about Heupel's job status. This is his chance, Mike. This is his chance to get back on a good foot, to get UCF back in the positive light, and good momentum going into 2021, and gives him an opportunity to silence the doubters out there who say that he can't win the big one, he can't beat a big team. So I think there's 3 reasons. This is an actually really compelling matchup on I guess next Tuesday whenever this game is played.
Say what you want about bowl games. A lot of people don't put a lot of stock in bowl games. They think of them as exhibitions. They don't mean a lot. A lot of players opt out of bowl games that are not part of the playoff, but they are big when you come down to ranking teams to start the next year. What the last thing people saw from you is what they're going to go into next year thinking. That's the reason we started off this year ranked, because we finished the year strong last year against Marshall, finished in the top 25, and they gave us the credit coming into this year. And if Dylan Gabriel can go out in this game and put up a big number against a team that everybody thinks is a really good team, then absolutely he's already going to be getting a lot of publicity going into next season as it is. If he comes in off a big win this year against BYU in the bowl game, he'd be getting even more hype going into next year. And as for Heupel, you're right. He's only been the underdog, I believe, twice.
Yep.
In his time at UCF, the LSU game and the Cincinnati game.
0-2.
Exactly. He's not won one yet, and he needs to pull one of these out. So he pulls this one out here. It's a good win for him. And same with Gabriel. Heupel and Gabriel's team going forward. No more Mackenzie Milton. There's no more ties now to the 2017 season. This is Heupel's team now, and he's got to start making his mark. This game can get us back in the top 25 with a nice convincing win against a good team. Lots to still be made coming out of this game. We can set ourselves up nicely. Remember, we start the season with Boise State next year, another G5 showdown. So we come into that game coming off a win here against BYU and then beat Boise State next year. What other teams other than Cincinnati? And we're going to get a shot at them later next year too. So we can catapult ourselves right back to the top of the G5 class with a win starting this week.
Well, again, I don't want to make this entire show about about Mackenzie, but one of the things that Mackenzie did is he played really well in the big games. And granted, the stages were different on the games he played in because obviously these were quasi-playoff games and conference championship games and things like that. But Dylan has that stage here. To your point, you mentioned BYU's quarterback Zach Wilson has largely been regarded as a potential top draft pick, right? He's one of those top guys that everyone loves from a quarterback standpoint. He's put together a really solid season. If Dylan Gabriel is able to go out and outduel Zach Wilson, lead the team to a convincing victory, yeah, I mean he puts himself in that list, Mike, and he gives himself that game. I was thinking about this earlier today. What is Dylan Gabriel's signature game so far at UCF? Now I get he's only played a little bit, less than 20-ish games so far as a UCF Knight. What is his signature game in your mind? And when someone says, hey, the Dylan Gabriel game, what game comes to your mind?
The first one that jumps out at me is the Stanford game last year at home. It was only his second start, but he came out on fire that game, and we lit them up early. What else is there? He's had huge performances, and not to take anything away from the kid. He's had monster games, over 400 yards, but against who? Against East Carolinas and teams like that. The game against the Cougars this past couple weeks ago. But has he done it against one of these big teams? Now, he hasn't really played a lot of big teams.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. Stanford was one of them. The Pitt game last year, he struggled. The Cincinnati games the last 2 years. Yeah, he played decently against Cincinnati this year. The one interception was not his fault. It went right off of Marlon Williams' hand. But he doesn't have that signature win yet, that signature moment, that come from behind win. He could have had it at Memphis this year. Had Obarski made the kick, that would have been another one because he had a huge day that day, 600 yards, another 50 yards passing. That could have been his signature game, but we ended up losing. So it's got to be in a win. He's got a chance here against BYU. We have a lot of history with BYU. I mean, we've only played them twice, but 2 games that were very competitive. One in Provo, we only lost by 7, and we beat them by 7 in overtime here in Orlando. 2 very good, exciting games. And don't forget, I told you about the history of Dylan's dad against BYU.
You've been all over this one. Yes, you have. You've been all over this one.
30 years ago, I tried to make the comparison when we were playing Cincinnati. I tried to draw the line there, but this is very clear now. We're playing BYU themselves, and they're coming in as a top-ranked team with a highly touted quarterback, just like his dad did 30 years ago, and his dad lit him up. Actually, he beat him twice. He beat him in 89 and in 90. So the Gabriels with a very good history against BYU. They probably hate the Gabriel family over there in Mormon country. So let's give them another reason to not be happy with him.
Well, so again, Dylan's had some great statistical games. I mean, I'm not trying to say he hasn't, right? People are going to jump down my throat. I mean, the kid threw for 600 yards against Memphis, right? He threw for 400 yards, 3 times this year. He's got 30 touchdowns on the year. I mean, he's had a phenomenal season. He's got really good statistics. But yeah, to your point, that signature game that you think of, and that's where this just, to me, sometimes you wonder if things are just kind of, I don't want to call them fate, but you could see this setting up the right way, right? The legendary quarterback just steps aside for this young kid. There's a bunch of people who are kind of, I don't know, he's good, but maybe, I don't know. And as much as people don't maybe want to admit it, there's probably some people out there who think it's the wrong decision. And he gets a chance to go in and play a tough opponent and play a school that, again, frankly, right now people think are better than us, or at least they are playing better than us, and a quarterback who people think is better than him. I mean, this is just an opportunity to write this signature script on sort of his coming out party. Sometimes you wonder if things are too perfect, if it makes too much sense. But you can definitely see things kind of setting up that way. But obviously, Dylan's only one piece of this thing, Mike. BYU is a tough team. Let's go through their stuff quickly. They're 10-1. Obviously, they're independent. Here are their victories this year: Navy, Troy, Louisiana Tech, University of Texas San Antonio, Houston, Texas State, Western Kentucky, Boise, North Alabama, and San Diego State. And you said earlier their lone loss was a game that got scheduled and played within 72 hours, a 22-17 Coastal Carolina loss. They actually ended up getting down to the 1-yard line and when the time expired. So certainly that game was a lot closer, Mike. So a 10-1 BYU team. They've looked like world beaters all year long. Again, the closest game, they had a 27-20 win over Texas San Antonio. Other than that, Mike, everything has been at least a 20-point victory for them outside of San Diego State this past week, 14-10. But they've been hurting people so far this year.
Some of that may be a little misleading. The one game I actually did kind of watch a lot of theirs was the Houston game. And they were trailing against Houston in the fourth quarter, ended up scoring late and then getting a turnover with another score. And they kind of, I think they put like 3 touchdowns on the board in the fourth quarter to run away with it. But they weren't having that easy of a time with Houston. And the rest of their schedule, I mean, you went through the names. Nobody on there you'd be scared of. I think we could probably run the table against that schedule too. And Coastal Carolina is a good team, and they were 1 yard away from beating them. 1 yard away from right now being undefeated and having a shot at a New Year's Six game is where this team is. And now they're playing a 3-loss American team in Boca. I mean, that's their reward for the season they're having.
What's wrong with Boca?
A 4th place team from the American. But I mean, it's a game that people want to see. I think if you follow the media, a lot of guys that cover college football, they're excited about this game because of the offenses. And going back to Dylan just for a second, remember I drew this comparison like last week or a couple weeks ago with the 2012 season where Bortles had he kind of started putting things together in 2012 later in the year, and then he had a big game in the bowl game against Ball State that led to the 2013 season that we all remember. This could be the same thing for Dylan Gabriel. He comes out here in this game and puts together a nice performance and a big win, set everything up perfectly for next year.
Well, again, he's one part of it. So a couple of pieces to the story to make sure that we're clear about. So nothing has been officially reported, but I think we can certainly we expect that there will be a number of players from UCF who you should not expect to see in this game. I think it's probably pretty common knowledge at this point. Marlon Williams has declared himself eligible for the draft. I think he's had some surgery to clean up some injuries and get prepared for the draft time. So Marlon Williams is probably a name you should not expect to see in the field. Parker Boudreaux hasn't played all year long. The team is out practicing and they're doing their thing. And Parker's social media has him taking pictures of himself in his own in a lonely gym, would lead one to think that he's currently not practicing with the team. There's rumors going around. Obviously, he's always had this wrestling career rumor happening. There's rumors that maybe that's a thing. So I don't think we should expect to see Parker Boudreaux out on the field. Then you've got the 2 defensive guys. You got Richie Grant and Aaron Robinson. Both have accepted invites to the Senior Bowl. I don't think anything has been officially announced, but I think there's some people leaning towards not anticipating seeing either of those 2 guys out there in the field. And then you've got a couple other guys. Jacob Harris accepted some sort of invite to some sort of a showcase situation. He was pictured on some of the stuff UCF put on social media. Obviously, we knew Otis Anderson did not play in the Cows game. He is also being pictured, so we're not quite sure his status, but it seems like he's out there at least practicing. Same thing with Greg McCrae. Trey Nixon, same thing. But again, if he's a guy who's thinking about testing the draft, he's obviously had an injury. It would make some sense for him to sit out. We saw Stefan Zaya sit out the Cows game. So we probably could expect, Mike, that we'll have a handful of guys who won't be out there, particularly 2 big guys on the defense in Grant and Robinson.
For sure, Grant and Robinson, I can say I don't think he's going to play. But the offensive guys, I think most of them are going to be back, except for Marlon Williams. I think we're going to have pretty much our full stable of weapons. I expect Otis and McCrae to be back there. They've been practicing with the team. Trey Nixon, I expect to play too. He's only been back for a game. I think he's got to prove, even if he wants to go in the draft this year, I think he still needs to prove that he's healthy and he can put together a few games here. He has a nice bowl game here. Maybe then he decides to leave. And Jacob Harris, he needs to put as much on film as he possibly can. He had a great game against the Cows, 3 touchdowns. The potential is there. He needs to show consistency. So he needs to have a big game here and then go to the showcase wherever he goes and impress some scouts there. Maybe he's got a shot. But I expect the weapons to be there. The thing that scares you is the defense, especially the secondary. Losing Grant, Robinson, a lot of experience. We're playing now with a lot of young guys. I mean, the last couple games, those were the 2 guys that actually had the experience after losing Collier and all the other guys from the incident in November. Now we're short 2 more guys from a defense that did not look sharp against the Cows. Don't know what to expect out of those guys, especially going up against a BYU offense that could put up some points.
Well, here's another stat that's going to be a little bit concerning. So BYU's offensive line, one of the things that BYU gets touted for is their physicality on both sides of the line of scrimmage. BYU's offensive line, I did some math here, Mike, they average about 305 across the board. If you use the defensive line that we started against the Cows, which was Landon Winstead, Noah Hancock, Antonio Montalvo, and Tremont Morris-Brash, those guys combined average 263 pounds. So we're giving up about 40 pounds offensive line to defensive line. And those are just the guys we start. Now, again, we have some guys off the bench. Cam Good goes 295. Keenan Hester goes 275. Chris DeLoach goes 265. So you've got some beef off the bench there. But, I mean, that's something to think about. You know, if they control the line of scrimmage and when we can't get any pressure and they can continue to just wear on our guys all day long, that's certainly a recipe for disaster. Obviously, Zach Wilson gets a lot of publicity, but they have a running back, Tyler Algier, almost a 1,000-yard rusher, 12 touchdowns on the year. So certainly not afraid to run the ball as well. And so that's a concerning piece. Obviously, the secondary is one thing, but if we can't get any pressure and the secondary can't hold up, I mean, that's just that's a bad day just waiting to happen. Same thing with the running game. If we can't get any gap integrity, and as much as these guys have played well, a guy like Tremont Morris-Brash, he's known to get outside of his gap a little bit and get upfield and give up gaping running holes. We saw that against the Cows. So I assume Randy Shannon's still employed. He has not been in any photograph that UCF has put out of anything. Like every other coach has been there. I've seen all of them in the photographs. I'm like, is there Bruder filming this thing too? I'm zooming in. I'm trying to find him anywhere. You don't see him pictured anywhere that I can see. So I assume he's still employed with us, and if so, he's going to have to come up with a really interesting game plan to stop a BYU team that's pretty good on execution on offense, and certainly will have the size advantage, especially up front with the big boys.
That's always a concern. Anytime we play a P5 school, and BYU is considered that with their reputation, the offensive, defensive lines, how we stack up, that's always a concern. You don't worry about our skill position guys against any school. Our wide receivers, running backs, we can put them up against anybody. But on the lines is where we traditionally struggled and don't have as much depth as some of these other schools. This is going to be a tough matchup for us. So you mentioned the size difference. Are we going to be able to rotate 6, 7, 8 guys on the defensive line? That's going to be the key, I guess, because you just don't want to get worn down in the fourth quarter. Exactly what happened even with the Cows. Just on the field for way too many plays. You got to be able to get other guys in there and get them off the field on third down. Just, create turnovers like we've done all season long. If we can do that, create turnovers like we did against everybody else, I think we'll be okay.
Well, this is where, I mean, we've talked about the D-line being, kind of outnumbered just in terms of pure body mass, and the secondary being outnumbered probably in terms of experience. But you think about games where we've played like this in the past, where we've had, a veteran, maybe a sort of a size difference on the offensive defensive lines. What we've typically had is we've had linebackers who are able to cover up for that. Shaquem Griffin in the Peach Bowl comes to mind. I don't remember off the top of my head, what our average weight was on the D line that year, but Shaquem was everywhere making plays from the linebacker spot. So can our linebackers hold up, Mike? Obviously, we have 2 young guys. I think we've been really excited about what we've seen from Tatum Bethune lately. John Baptiste has played okay in spots. I think Gilliard, I've been one. I thought he would have a great career at UCF. I think he's had an okay career, but he hasn't had that signature moment. This could be an opportunity for the linebackers to really have to step up and make some big plays, particularly if, again, you don't have Aaron Robinson behind you making plays. You don't have Richie Grant behind you making plays. And those are 2 of the leading tacklers in the team. So, hopefully, is this a spot where basically the linebackers have to step up? Really what we've said here, if you've listened to any of this, is basically our whole defense is a problem. And we've got to figure out a way to hold up against a BYU team that's, put up 40 or 50 points in pretty much every game except for 1, 2, 3 this year. So it's going to be a tough test.
These young guys they're not young anymore. They've played a couple full seasons, just like with Dylan Gabriel. Going into next year, you can have a big game from this year at the end of this year to springboard just next year. You can say the same thing about our linebackers and the young defensive guys, or even the freshmen, Thornton, guys like that. They've played a lot this season, so that can't be an excuse anymore. But we got to find a way to get some kind of pressure. Cam Good up the middle, something to disrupt these guys. Selaskar. Have a game like he had against Georgia Tech. Yeah. Somebody's going to have to step up and have a big day and take some pressure off the secondary.
Yeah, we're going to need a special performance, right? Yeah, I don't want to compare anybody to Shaquem in that Peach Bowl, but we're going to need a that type of performance, somebody playing really just outside their head to help us out. A couple of things else on BYU to think about. They have some pretty decent receiving core. Dax Milne, 1,000-yard receiver, 8 touchdowns, Mike. Here's what scares me. They have a guy named Isaac Rex, maybe his last name is, tight end, 10 touchdowns on the year. We haven't necessarily been great at covering the tight end, I feel like, particularly because that requires some of our linebackers and some of our cover guys in the secondary to help out. So if they're gonna throw the tight end 33 catches on the year, 10 TDs, he's obviously a red zone target. That's not something that's been a strength of ours too. So it's going to be a tough matchup. Now, to be fair, BYU has to match up with us, right? And have they seen an offense that has our speed? Have they seen a quarterback that has our Dylan Gabriel's arm and his accuracy? Have they seen guys out of the backfield who can do the things that we know those guys can do? Have they seen a guy like Jay Flash? Who knows? Losing Marlon's going to be tough, but can BYU keep up with our offense? I guess that's the flip side that you have to think about.
Right. For as good as BYU is, can they even play better than the Cougars played against us? Because if they're scoring that much, who can score more? They scored plenty of points. It's not like we were stopping them, so. We're just going to have to match them score for score with our offense, which I'll put our offense up against anybody. We can put some points on the board. Maybe one of these games, whoever has the ball last kind of deal, which is fun. For a bowl game, that's kind of what you're looking for. You want an exciting game. You don't want one of these 6-3 snooze fest like we had in the Liberty Bowl against Mississippi State, freezing our butts off. You want some excitement. Even if you end up losing the game, a nice competitive, fun football game is the way to end the season.
And that's what we'll have, Mike. Tuesday, 7 p.m., the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl. It'll be on ESPN. There are, I think I saw you post, Mike, there are some tickets available. You and I are recording this on Monday, the 14th. Some tickets still available based on what you saw, yes?
Yeah, it was a little weird. Last night, I keep checking the seats. My other buddy still hasn't purchased his. And last week when ours went on sale, there were a bunch of them scattered around the sidelines. And then over the weekend, those went away. And they were only selling the end zone seats. And I said, wow, maybe they sold out all those. But no, because today they reopened those sideline seats back open again. So plenty of seats still available between the 10 and 10-yard lines down the sideline. We're going to be sitting at the 50. We got in early. We got good seats. I like our seats. Our seats are basically exactly where my season tickets are at the UCF games. On the 50-yard line, halfway up the second level. You see everything perfect from there. I'm very excited about our seats. But still, I think a couple left in our section, maybe resales. But then a couple sections over, there's still seats available. And then tomorrow, well, who knows when you guys listen to this, but by Tuesday this week, they should be reopening up the BYU sideline. And they have, similar to what we have in the Cabana, like they call it the Hyundai deck over there, where you can stand and watch the games. So there should be plenty of seats available. If you want a ticket, you can get one. And I would get them through Ticketmaster because people that have put them on StubHub, they've jacked up the prices ridiculously, selling them for like $300-400, which you can get them right now. A nice sideline seat for $65 or the end zone for $40.
Good seats still available. So if you can, make it down to Boca. It should be a fun time. It'll be the first time, the Sons of UCF, first time we've actually seen each other since the show started, I believe, if that's correct. I've got a bit of an issue, though. I'm 0-1 in bowl games in the last couple of years, so hopefully I don't bring another jinx with us. But so we'll be down there. We'll get you more info on that. We'll let you guys know where we are if anyone wants to say hello or whatnot. There's social distancing and whatnot, but we can wave at you from afar. Who we're not going to be waving at, Mike, is our now former co-offensive coordinator and running backs coach, Anthony Tucker, who initially, for me at least, head-scratchingly left to become the offensive coordinator at Utah State, which didn't really make a ton of sense until you look into it for just a second and you realize that he's going to be the primary play caller, gets a little bit of a pay bump, and he previously coached under Blake Anderson, who is now the new head coach at Utah State. So for the second straight off season, we lose an offensive coordinator, or this time more of a co-offensive coordinator. But obviously, Anthony Tucker's been a a stable in the Heupel staff since he's been here. The running backs have obviously been a very talented group. He's been responsible for that, Mike. So Anthony Tucker no longer with the staff. Obviously, no word on what that means. I assume that means Heupel will continue to call plays and Golish will pick up maybe more responsibilities in the short term, Mike. But your thoughts on the departure of Anthony Tucker?
When you look at it on the surface, it seems like a lateral move, offensive coordinator here to an offensive coordinator there. But as we all know, he's not really an offensive coordinator here. I mean, just in title alone, Heupel is the true offensive coordinator. So he has a chance to go call plays and make a name for himself over there. It's good for him. And if he's getting more money, good for him. And he's working with a guy that he's worked with before. And in Utah, it's not a horrible place to live. It's not like he's going to some like Arkansas or someplace in the middle.
There goes our Arkansas fan base.
Arkansas is an SEC school, I know, but I mean, who wants to live in some of these cities across where some of these universities are?
Sure.
Utah State is in what city? Salt Lake City?
Hell if I know. I didn't think you were going to hit me with where the Utah State reference is. I'll look it up for you, though.
I don't think it hurts us much losing him. I'm not around the guy every day in practice, so I can't tell you what he brings every day. But on a game day, he's definitely not calling the plays. I don't know what exactly he's doing on the sideline. So I don't think, as a UCF fan, we're going to miss him much. I don't really remember seeing him that much. I'm sure he was on the sidelines, but
he wasn't
that's something
sidelines.
I pay attention to. Like, where's Anthony Tucker during the game? So this happens in college football. The staffs change over all the time. And Heupel kept his staff together for the first couple of years, and now you're going to see more and more guys leave. And head coaches go through thousands of assistant coaches. If they're a head coach for a long time, O'Leary had hundreds and hundreds of assistant coaches over his time.
That's a lot.
So it's just something you got to get used to.
Utah State is in Logan, Utah. Mike, I hear it's beautiful there. Actually, the campus looks really nice in the picture they have here. It's tough to tell how much of a loss sometimes these guys are because we don't get to interact with them. We don't get to see what they're doing. We don't get to understand how they run the team, how they run their position groups. Obviously, with Tucker being the co-offensive coordinator, does that really mean anything? It's hard to say. I think he was a passing game coordinator last year. I never really understand what that means. Maybe somebody smarter than football can explain to me what a passing game coordinator is versus an offensive coordinator. But anytime you have continuity, turnover like that, there's bound to be some people who are upset that he's gone. Obviously, some names are already being thrown about. A couple things that I think I can confirm for you right now. Kevin Smith, I'd love to have him back. He makes more at Mississippi State now as a running backs coach than we paid Tucker as a co-OC. Wouldn't seem likely we can get that money match. Now, if somebody else on the staff leaves and Heupel's assistant pool money changes, perhaps. But as much as I would love $24K back, it seems unlikely just based on the finances. Tyson Hinshaw recently let go as the QB coach at Kentucky. Again, we have a running back coach position available. I don't know how that works out, if he can do both. I don't know what his money situation is. I'm willing to bet he was probably making more because he's an SEC school. Same thing with Kevin Smith. So I don't know if he's an option as well, but I know that his name has been thrown about. Two guys who I would love to have back. I just don't know if it works out financially unless something changes with Heupel's assistant pool and or one of these guys just really wants to get back to Orlando.
Something that I thought was funny you just talked about. Tucker was the passing
game
offensive coordinator.
Passing game coordinator.
But he was the running backs coach.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
It was a little weird. You figured that the passing
it's easy, Mike. Hold on. It's not that hard because if he's not running the ball, then they're throwing it, right? So he's like, hey, all right, well, I know we're not running it. I guess we can throw it then. Maybe it's easier than you think.
I don't know. It seems like a quarterback coach or a wide receivers coach would be better off being the passing coordinator. Maybe he could have been the running coordinator. I don't know. Seems a little weird. But for these other guys, we've talked before about having an all UCF coaching staff one day. We'd love to have these guys back on campus, any one of them. Kevin Smith, Darren Hinshaw, any of these guys. Schneider, we've talked about before. But eventually it'll happen. Who knows if it'll happen under Heupel. Eventually these guys will come back. I'm sure that a lot of them would love to come back to Orlando. Why wouldn't you? That's where they're from. Everybody always wants to coach at their alma mater. And like I said, the city plays a big part too. Living in Orlando has to be better than living in Logan, Utah, I would think, but maybe not for Anthony Tucker.
And then while we're on the coaching news really quickly, obviously a bunch of head coaching jobs have opened up. It's interesting how this goes, Mike. 2 years ago, every time a job opened up, Heupel's name was listed. Even last year, Heupel's name was listed every now and again. Got a handful of openings right now. You've seen a smattering of Heupel listed as an option, but nowhere near as much as you have. So Auburn is open. It doesn't seem like Heupel's a fit for that role. I think they've got a couple guys in mind, probably more high-profile coaches there. So that job's open. And then Arizona, poor Kevin Sumlin, 6 degrees of UCF. Kevin Sumlin, who by all accounts was one of the top choices for the job after Frost left, that actually went to Heupel. His name was mentioned as a possible candidate in an Arizona newspaper for that opening. Although, to be fair, they listed like 10 candidates, so they just pretty much threw every coach's name at the wall there. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Obviously, Heupel, his buyout, I think, decreases on the 23rd from a pretty significant amount to a much smaller amount. So with some coaching openings, we'll see if Heupel's name actually comes to fruition. Right now, there's not a ton of smoke on that front yet, Mike, but obviously something, I guess, to keep an eye on and see if his name gets mentioned elsewhere.
Well, if he has a huge game against BYU, maybe the talks ratchet up another level. But I gotta think he'd want to stick around at least one more year with Dylan Gabriel, see how that goes. And if he has a big year with him next year, and he'd probably get some big offers coming in after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's code. You never know, right? I mean, stranger things happened. I don't think anyone thought Gus Malzahn was going to get fired when he did. So, but the dominoes are where you worry, right? Because then you hear about Mario Cristobal maybe taking that job. That means Oregon's open. Oregon likes to throw the ball around. Is that a Heupel type of thing? Who knows? So, anyway, it'd be interesting to see if that comes to fruition, right? Because there's been a lot of anti-Heupel slander. You and I are not innocent in that regard. So it'd be interesting to see if that actually comes to fruition. Kind of where things fall at that point. But that's kind of the update as it relates to the team, the game. Again, roofclaim.com Bowl Tuesday in Boca Raton against the BYU Cougars. But Mike, let's take a quick little breather here. We'll grab a commercial, and then we'll get to the McKenzie stuff. It's out there. People want to talk about it, I'm sure. So we'll give you a couple quick thoughts on McKenzie. So sit tight through this commercial, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. So you know what we all knew. Mackenzie Milton obviously announced his intention to transfer, and we all speculated where that would be, what that would be. And on Sunday, we found out when Andre Adelson initially broke, and then Mackenzie confirmed himself on his social media, he'd be taking his talents to Tallahassee, and he'd be joining the Florida State Seminoles. It's obviously since been confirmed by Mackenzie in a bunch of different outlets. Norvell's posted it out there. Mackenzie's now gone and changed his profile picture. So, Mike, it's obviously official. It's signed, sealed, delivered. Mackenzie to Tallahassee. I know you've had some places you were okay with him going, some places you were kind of concerned about. We kind of maybe saw this coming, but thoughts now that it's official?
Well, of the 3 Florida schools, Florida, Florida State, Miami, I think this one hurts me the least. I would have hated to see him go to the Gators for sure, and I wouldn't really have liked him at Miami either. Not that I like him at Florida State, but I kind of had prepared myself for it. I thought he would want to stay in Florida. Turns out that was true. And, I mean, I'm not thrilled with it, but I can understand where he's coming from. The thing that surprised me is the number one thing he talked about was having a good offensive line, and Florida State has struggled on the offensive line for the last few years. Maybe he knows something that we don't know. He seems to have faith in Mike Norvell, which I don't really think he's a great coach. I don't think a lot of us do. But maybe he has a nice relationship with him. And he's going to have some winnable games. The ACC is not a great conference. There's Clemson and there's everybody else. He opens the year against Notre Dame next year. That'd be a high-profile game. That's one we can all root for him in. And it'd be a nice story to have him come back in his first game and beat a top-ranked Notre Dame team. That's a good story. He's got a couple of chances for other big signature wins. Play the Gators at the end of the year. He'll have a game against Clemson. Then he has other games where he should be able to put up some stats and make a name for himself going into the draft next year.
All right, let me start this off by saying I know what I'm supposed to say here, right? I'm supposed to say that Mackenzie's once a night, always a night, and we're gonna root for him forever, and we wish him the best. And every game he plays, we'll be cheering him on unless he plays UCF. That's what I'm supposed to say, right? I feel like that's what's expected, and I largely do believe that, Mike. But I'm also kind of a bitter, petty person. So a couple of things have kind of irked me a little bit about this, and I don't know if I'm allowed to feel this way. I don't know how fans are. I'm going to get through the 5 stages here in a second, but Mackenzie released this statement, and I don't know where she picked this up from. I don't know if this is a direct quote to her specifically, or if she got this from someplace else. But this is from Jamie Say, who is at Channel 6 in Orlando, and this is what Mackenzie's quote is talking about UCF. When you hear UCF, when you hear FSU, you see the garnet and gold. That's something that's rich in history and great players, both past and present. It's a school you dream about going to as a kid. Getting the opportunity to go there as a 23-year-old man is the perfect way to end my opportunity. Then blah, 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 blah. This is a great opportunity to play at the highest level and be around some great players and great teammates at the same time. Is FSU the highest level, Mike? Is that like low-key? Am I just reading too much into this because I'm bitter and petty? Is that low-key shade at playing in a quote-unquote group of 5 school?
I don't think so. I don't think he means it that way. I think he's just trying to compliment Florida State and say some nice things. In the national perspectives, Florida State is in one of the highest levels. They play in the ACC, which is regarded as one of the top conferences, whether we believe it is or not. The facts of the matter is, this year they may get 2 teams in the playoff. So it is highly regarded. If Florida State starts out 2-0, 3-0, they're in the top 25 every year, no matter what. Doesn't matter who they played for those 2-3 games. So they get respect just based on their name. So from that way, I can see what he's saying. I don't think he's meaning it as any kind of disrespect to UCF or even the American.
I gotta tell you, you actually called this perfectly, right? You were the guy last week or 2 weeks ago. You said, "Hey, everyone's gonna be all for Mackenzie until let's see what happens when he tries out in the field." I'm not gonna lie to you, Mike. I saw that, that graphic that was made, and then I saw he changed his Twitter profile picture. I cringed a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had a little bit of feeling right there when I looked at it. I was like, "Oh my God, that's not what I expected to see." Just a little bit of feeling there. I wonder if anybody else felt the same way. I know we're all supposed to say great things, and I really do honestly mean that, Mike. I think the kid's been through enough. He deserves a chance to live out his dream. Who am I to crush that? But a little bit of me was like, "Oh, that's not what I want to see."
Yeah, how are you all gonna feel week 1 against Notre Dame when he throws a touchdown and he starts doing the tomahawk chop? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I want him to do well. Like you said, I do want him to do well. I hope he has a good year and gets drafted, and I hope he puts up a lot of points and a lot of stats and gets noticed. But I don't want Florida State to win every single game. I don't want them to go to the playoffs and win a national championship. I'm sorry, I don't. I just don't like them. So if he can go 8-4 next year, have a good, solid season, they have a nice win against Notre Dame and a couple other big games. But I don't want him. I want us to do better, no matter what it is.
Sure.
I want us to finish ranked higher than Florida State next year, and still at the same time, go on and have a nice NFL career. I think we can have it both ways.
Yeah, that's what I really need. I need to have it both ways, right? I need, with the Frost stuff, it was kind of easy because he sort of snaked us out the door, and so there was kind of reasons to be angry at him. Mackenzie hasn't done anything wrong. That's the problem. I mean, the kid's like a just one of the most perfect embodiments of a teammate and of a player and of a representative of a school you could ever have, right? So it's hard to have any sort of like ill will against the guy, And so with the Frosting it was easy because he went to Nebraska, was 4-8, and we were all like, "Hey, we'll see you at the Fiesta Bowl." It's going to be interesting with Mackenzie because, we'll see where he goes. I mean, there's competition in the quarterback room there. Jordan Travis played pretty well. They have Brock Purdy's brother, Chuba. Not sure how they pronounce that specifically. Also not sure who's naming the Purdy children. And then they also have Tate Rodemaker, who's a freshman. So he's got some guys in the room there he's going to have to compete with. It's a curious move, Mike. I'm not going to lie to you. I understand, what – now I think I know more about what Mackenzie valued. He wanted to stay in the state of Florida. He obviously mentioned he wanted to play in warm weather. So I think those were two things. He was familiar with Norvell, knew Norvell's system. I think the offensive line thing, I think he said that initially, and I think now that's probably one of the lower priority items on his list because, to your point, he would have picked a better O-line. Plus, part of me wonders if he would have had a chance for a different school if he had waited. I know he wanted to get on campus early, but, with everything else going on right now, other transfers, other schools, other coaches leaving, you wonder what other options may have been available to him if he wanted to wait. Just clearly tells me he had his eyes set on maybe one or two schools, and Florida State was clearly one of those. He got the offer he wanted, and he jumped on it, which, again, you can't blame the kid if that's what he wants to do. That's what he wants to do. But it is curious from the FSU standpoint because I guess you got to hope – I guess I assumed that schools would want McKenzie, who felt like they were a quarterback away from really competing. And do you think Florida State's in that spot? Are they a QB away from, and I know the ACC is really watered down, but are they a quarterback away from competing for a spot in the championship game and maybe even cracking a playoff?
No, I don't think. I think they're a few years away from that, but they can compete in the conference. They did beat North Carolina earlier this year. I don't know how, but I guess they did.
I know Miami
North
didn't.
Carolina's a decent team. No, they did not. They beat, I guess it was Duke this past week. So they're not a completely inept team. They're not a great team, and he can bump them up a couple pegs for sure.
But would you say they're rebuilding? Are they? Is that a rebuilding program right now? Is that a program that they're kind of restarting from the ground up, similarly to what McKenzie walked into at UCF in 2016?
Yes. I mean, he's with the coach. The coach has only been there for a year, so clearly they're rebuilding. But, I mean, maybe it has to do with other schools that he was interested in weren't ready to commit to him yet. And we're talking about signing day coming up soon. Teams may not want to have signed him this early and scared away a recruit. Maybe a team like Miami or some other schools like that. So maybe they wanted to wait, and McKenzie didn't want to wait. And Florida State was one of his top choices and said, you know what, these guys really want me.
Yep.
And they came after me hard, and I said, okay. He had in mind maybe one or two or three schools, and if one of them really wanted him, he'd go there. And I think that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, I just find it curious because you think about, so McKenzie goes in there. Let's say he has a decent year. Let's say he helps get FSU kind of, back on the swing of things. Maybe they crack 500. Maybe they're assuming we play a full slate of games next year. Maybe they're a 7-4 team, 7-5, or 8-5, whatever that their record would be. But how does that help Norvell rebuild? Because then he's gone, and now he's got to go back to a young quarterback who hasn't played yet. So I guess that's where it's interesting to me is you think about a situation where you're rebuilding. You would think Norvell would say, hey, I'm not going to compete next year anyway. Like, I don't, unless he knows something we don't know, or maybe McKenzie knows something we don't know, or maybe you and I are just idiots. And they're way closer to being competitive than we think. But if I was rebuilding a team, I would say, let me take one of these young guys, kind of like what Frost did with Milton in 2016 and said, hey, I could start Holtman all day long. And yeah, we'll be all right. But like, let me get this kid in there and get him some reps. Let him, take a couple knocks here and propel us to the next season where McKenzie did. You wonder if Norvell would be better served making that move. Again, he's the coach. I'm not. Either way, I just hope McKenzie is able to go in and compete and stay healthy. And yeah, I do want to see him play well. I don't want to see him play better than we play. But yeah, it was just a curious decision. And admittedly, I'm anti FSU more so than maybe most, just because I grew up in South Florida, and when you grow up down there, Florida State's not really good for you. But yeah, I was surprised, and when I saw that sort of Photoshop thing, I cringed a little bit.
It's going to be hard for a lot of people to adjust, I think. And some people are with him no matter what. I've seen a lot of people also supporting him. I'll be at that first game, and they're going to be ordering FSU jerseys, McKenzie Milton FSU jerseys. I couldn't go there.
Yeah, those people are just way better people than I am. They just deserve some sort of a sainthood situation, maybe a star named after him, because I don't have that kind of maturity in my life where I'm going to be like, hey, Mike, let's drive up to Tallahassee. I don't have that in me.
We've also never personally met McKenzie Milton. So as much as we love him and love UCF and all the games and all the moments we've had with him, us personally, I've never met him in person. I only know him through all the interviews that most of the fans have seen. Some of these people actually have relationships with him. We talked to Jason Beatty on one of the pregame shows a few weeks ago. He's gone to school with him for the last 4 years. He's not only interviewed him, but he's studied with him. He's hung out with him. He's a guy that says, you know what, wherever he goes, I don't care. I want him to be happy. And I believe him.
Yeah.
And there's people like that too. Jan and Britt have developed a relationship with him over the last couple of years. And I see her saying, wherever he goes, I'll be there with the jersey on and I want to support him. I understand it. But for me personally, I'm a UCF fan. I'm a guy that does this show every week, but I really don't know these guys. We kind of get to know them when we interview them, like 10 years after they've done playing for us, and we develop a little relationship like that. But personally, I don't really know McKenzie. So looking at it as just a fan, I don't like seeing him in another uniform. So that's just me. And it kind of goes back to my relationship with the Giants. Eli Manning, what did he say when he retired this year? he didn't want to go to another team just for 1 year. I know it's different in college and the whole situation is different. But his quote was, once a Giant, always a Giant, only a Giant.
Yeah.
I wish we could have said that about Mackenzie. I understand it, but I don't have to like it. But it is what it is, and I guess I'll just have to deal with it for a year.
Well, I realized I was going through the 5 stages of grief here with Mackenzie, right? So the first one is denial, right? And if you remember, I was the one last week asking Andrea Adelson, is there any chance Mackenzie stays, right? So the denial phase. Then there's the anger phase, like FSU. Are you kidding me? How could you go to FSU? Like, what happened to Ohana? We were wearing lays. I was all mad about it. Then there's bargaining, and you go to yourself, well, maybe Dylan says he'll sit a year, and maybe then Mackenzie can play. You do the bargain thing. Then there's depression. Like, I cannot believe he's in this Photoshop. By the way, they absolutely killed his arm. They make his arm on that and his right arm look pitiful in that Photoshop. And there's acceptance. Where you like where you're at right now, where you say, hey, you know what? I wish he stayed. It's gonna be hard to see him in another uniform. Ultimately, though, you want to root for the kid to succeed in life, and you hope he does that. And ultimately, UCF's in a good spot too. We still have a quarterback who's pretty talented. So you kind of work yourself through those 5 stages of grief around Mackenzie leaving. But now at least we know the answer to the question: where will he go? I don't know how much we'll cover it, Mike. I mean, we're not an FSU podcast. I don't know how much we'll talk about it. I'm sure we'll bring up some stuff every now and again with Mackenzie. But ultimately, I do wish him the best. I certainly want to make sure that he stays healthy. Hopefully FSU can take care of him. Hopefully gets a chance to get out there and play and live his dream out. And, hopefully we don't have to run into him in some sort of a playoff game situation, because I would hate to root against him. But, at least we have the final chapter, at least the final page of this chapter is written. And we move on to Dylan Gabriel, and Mackenzie moves on to Tallahassee.
Well, I think that's the most important thing you said there is stay healthy. That injury was devastating for all of us, especially him. And you just want him to prove that he can bounce back and he can play football. I mean, Alex Smith did it. Now he's got his chance to do it. He can come back and then have a career in the NFL. That's his dream. We'd love to see it happen. Go out, have a good year in Tallahassee, and fulfill your dream, and then come back to us 10, 20, 30 years down the road as a coach and be back in the black and gold where he belongs.
Well, let's transition from serious topic to fun topic idea, Mike. UCF observations. Each week, one of us, and this week it's you again, sits down and just get your thoughts together. Thoughts around things going on UCF, things around the sports world. Sometimes there's things we want to talk about, but we just can't fit them in the show. It's not a full segment. It's not all that stuff. So where else do you put those things in except for a brand new segment? UCF observations, Mike. You've got the official UCF observations list for this week. What's on your mind? What did you see? What are your notes?
No pregame show and no live show this week. The Suns are getting lazy, my friends. What's going on here?
That's fair.
We took a week off here.
Well, pregame for what though? we wasn't a pregame. The basketball games got canceled. There's no basketball game until Saturday at like 9 o'clock in the middle of the night. So there's no pregame to do there. There's no football game. I mean, what do you want to pregame?
No, I know. But last week we did a live show on a Thursday.
Yeah.
This week we did nothing.
That's fair.
Okay.
We are lazy. You're not wrong.
All the North Carolina running backs can scoot.
All of them can. My word, Miami. Oof. Oof.
That was hilariously fun to watch.
My goodness, yeah.
The Miami Hurricanes have been downgraded to a passing shower.
Nice.
This guy is ranked number 10, North Carolina. Oh my God! Every play was a freaking touchdown, basically. 2 guys over 13 yards a pop. Oh boy.
Part of me was thinking, like, man, I wish we would have played them. Part of me was like, man, I'm glad we didn't play them. It kind of went back and forth. It would have been great first game of the year, to have played North Carolina when we were supposed to.
I think a lot of it is when you play somebody.
Sure.
I think early in the year they were not playing great. They opened the year a little slow, and then they lost the game to Florida State there. I think early in the year we would have had them, but on this past Saturday, that team showed up against our defense. I don't think we would have had much success stopping them either, and that would have been a tough bowl game for us. Miami coming into that game, you would have thought might have been a tough matchup with their offense. They looked like crap, and now everybody says, "Wow, we would kill Miami." So who the heck knows? It's all about timing. LSU beat Florida without 3 starting defensive backs. That sounds mighty familiar.
It does.
Right?
Yes. Where have I seen that movie before?
Marco Wilson
Ooh.
making chancla throwing abuelitas all over the world proud.
I don't know what that means. I don't know. One more time with that? Hold on.
The chancla throwing abuelitas.
Okay, yeah.
Grandmas that throw their slippers at you.
Abuelita. Yeah, you got me on that one.
he flung that shoe 20 yards. Even the official even said throwing the shoe 20 yards.
Yeah, I was confused. So was it the yardage that got him the penalty, or was it the throwing of the shoe? If it was a 10-yard throw, was he good? I need more clarity on that.
Yeah, if he just would have picked it up and flung it 2 feet, maybe he doesn't get penalized. But he threw that thing like it was a Kyle Trask bomb.
Oh, wow.
I didn't lose any sleep over that one either.
Yeah.
A few good last ones.
That was good.
KZ going to a team with one of the worst O-lines. You know what that is?
Recipe for disaster?
It could be, but it's a head scratcher.
Head scratcher.
It is a head scratcher.
It is. We had. I put a call out for questions, Mike. Actually, I'll squeeze this one here because it's on topic. Let me get it to you real quick. Let me toggle here. Man, I should have produced a show better than doing this on the fly. This is from our friend UCF farmer Scott. As UCF fans, as family to Mackenzie Milton, do we have the legal right to take matters into our own hands if FSU's offensive line allows KZ to get injured?
Well, is he talking about violence? Taking matters into, what's he going to do? He's going to go up and fight the FSU offensive line? I don't know what we can do. We're questioning it now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a big question mark. It's a head scratcher, like I just told you.
Well, UC Farmer Scott is I don't know if he's gathering up everything, getting the pitchforks ready, but he maybe wants to take matters in his own hands if the O-line gets Mackenzie hurt. So just keep that in mind. If we need to get something put together, we'll figure it out.
All right. Well, good luck to him. I'm sure those Florida State offensive linemen, even if they suck, probably some pretty big dudes. You may need some backup going in there.
We got a whole Night Nation. We got the Twitter Mafia. We're all set.
Yeah.
We'll get Trey Stroko.
Okay.
Trey Stroko.
The New York Football Giants are no longer back.
Nah.
That didn't last long.
No, that damn football team is pretty good, huh? Can't beat the football team.
Oh man. Well, we didn't play the football team.
I know, but they're leading the division. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, well, they got to play Seattle this week, so maybe they get knocked back down a peg too. We'll see. Still a few games to go. ACC schools such as Pitt, Virginia, and Boston College, they don't want this smoke in Boca, apparently. What is the deal with these teams canceling? You think they're just using COVID as an excuse, or do you put any stock in the fact that they see UCF sitting there waiting for it, and they say, no, we don't want to play UCF? We'd rather play a P5 school, or we don't want to play anybody.
Yeah, I hate to be conspiracy theory guy, right? But because COVID's a real thing, and I get that these kids have all been sort of bundled up in these bubbles and not being able to see family. And it's Christmas, and they maybe want to get home. So I don't want to discount that because I could absolutely see how that could be a thing, right? But I also think that it's a sort of a perfect storm. You know what? Hey guys, we're kind of ready for the season to be done anyway. Like, let's just get out. Like, we want to go see our family. Like, let's just keep going. Chalk this up to 2020, move on. And then you go, well, now we got, a UCF team sitting there, right? If we don't have all of our guys, they're going to throttle us. If they throttle us, that's just going to make us look bad. Like, do we really want to sign up for that? It'd be interesting to find out, like, if they had an opportunity, tomorrow of, I don't know, Pitt got invited to play, Michigan or something, right? Like, if they change their tune. I do think there is an element of, there's a no-win situation for schools like that to come down and play us.
Yeah, they don't want the smoke. I think it's
or
exactly
that, yes, you probably
say.
just said that. A lot of smoke not wanted.
Right. If they were, exactly. Even though Michigan was not good this year, if they got invited to play them in some other bowl, I think they'd go for it.
Yeah.
Hide your kids, hide your wife. The Suns are back together again in Boca this Tuesday night. Are you excited, buddy?
I'm actually bringing my kids and my wife, so I'm not really hiding any of them. Yeah, it's a good time, man. So I'm excited because here's the thing, Mike. So my little guy, my 8-year-old, he's not a huge football fan. He doesn't watch a lot of games. He's too busy doing other stuff. He's actually legit excited. He's got his UCF shirt picked out. He told me his favorite player is Dylan Gabriel. So I'm excited that he's excited. Even my daughter wanted to go to the game. I don't know if she actually wants to watch the game. But she was like, we gave them the option. We said, hey, we can get tickets. We can go down. It's a long game. Don't bother Daddy because he's going to be, really focused. You guys don't have to go. And my daughter was like, yeah, I want to go. So I'm excited that maybe I'm burgeoning some UCF fans here, and they're actually into it. And then B, to see all you Night Nation knuckleheads, they know there'll be social distance, and I got to figure out how to drink a Bud Light through a mask. I'll get all that figured out too. But the Sons of UCF together again for the first time. We have never, this is a true story, we have not seen each other in any form, shape, or way other than the live pregame show since we started our podcast.
Yeah, so 2016, even before the perfect season.
Even before.
Yeah, I think the summer before 2017 season is the last time we saw each other.
That's correct. So this podcast has gone on for 111 plus episodes without us ever being in the same room, which I don't know if that's cool or not, but it'll be a good time. Hide your kids, hide your wives, except for my kids and my wife will be there. And so it's interesting. We have a little reunion though, Mike, because my wife's coming, obviously. She is her old roommate at UCF at a Knights Crossing is going to be coming too. Obviously, you and I will be there. We were roommates, so it's a little bit of a reunion. I don't think the four of us have been together since... I don't even know when. Maybe my wedding.
First birthday?
Was it Addison's birthday? Was Kristen there for that?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, there you go then. So Addison is now 13. So 13 years ago is the last time the four of us were all in the same room.
I think wasn't she at the Miami game when we went to the Miami UCF game down here?
That's correct. That was 2008 or 9. Then yes, you might be correct.
Yeah, 2008.
Okay, so 12 years. Okay, we shaved a year off. All right, here we go.
Oh, wow. That was 12 years ago, too. Jeez.
Which just means one thing, Mike. We're old.
Yeah. Well, I'm hiding my kids and my wife because I'm not taking.
No, I mean, yes. But see, you live here. We're going down to see family. We got other stuff. Yeah, I mean, but the little guy's excited. So I told the little guy, I said, hey, listen, Mr. Mike knows everything about UCF. I want you to tell him a little bit about Dylan Gabriel, why you like him, what he does that you like in the field. And he was like, okay. So you may get a X's and O breakdown from Aiden on Dylan Gabriel.
Well, you mentioned a long game. I think you might be underselling it. This game starts at 7. I don't anticipate it getting over before 11:30. I think this is a 4.5-hour one of these. If there's a shootout that everybody's anticipating, this could be a long night there in Boca.
Especially for losing. It's going to be a really long night. Really long night.
Scott Frost couldn't have a hotter seat if he was in hell. Speaking of hell, Don Williams.
Yeah, poor Frost. I mean, he's going to get another year, though, man. They're not going to get rid of Frosty. He's going to get another year. His AD is, all about him right now. Fans are all kinds of pissed at him. But he's going to get another year, man. I just like how everyone now is he's like the laughing stock of the Big Ten or Nebraska is. Every time someone beats him, they say, hey, thanks for letting us play this year. It's a little bit of, so this is the petty, bitter side of me. I'm loving this part because, once you're out of my world, you're out of my world kind of thing. So I'm kind of enjoying seeing this a little bit on Frost. I don't want to, actually, I don't really care. He makes $35 million. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, I don't think he cares much. But there was a big thing this week of him making excuses for there was too many TV timeouts
yes,
or something,
yes.
Media timeouts he was bringing
yes.
up. It's getting ugly. You say he's got one more year, but it can get very ugly next year. I think he's already lost now 20 games
yes.
in 3 seasons, and that's more than their last 4 or 5 head coaches that had lost there.
Yep.
He was the prodigal son coming back home, but sometimes you don't want your superstars to be your coaches. And a lot of times that doesn't work, and you have to fire them. It does not end nicely. This is what Nebraska is experiencing now. It could be an ugly ending next year. What if they hire Heupel away to replace him again? That'd be funny, right?
I think it was actually, I was on another podcast this week, and I think Jeff Allen said something like, don't meet your heroes. And I think that's kind of what this looks like, right? He was their hero, right? So, obviously they've all met him before, but, be careful what you wish for. Because now what do you do when your hero, it's kind of Heupel-esque, right? He was a, they've had a lot of great players at Oklahoma, but he was one of the better players at Oklahoma, Heisman Trophy runner-up, offensive coordinator, and then he gets fired, right? And then it becomes this awkward thing about, what do you do with your heroes? So what do you do if Frost doesn't work out there and they got to can him?
It's like Yogi Berra coming back to manage the Yankees, and then he gets fired, and then he stays away from Yankee Stadium for 20 years. And things like that, not always the best thing. Yeah. So. Right. It's not us.
It's not us. Those are you know what those are. What we do have to deal with is UCF observations. That's what that was. We're gonna take a little breakaroo right here. And we're going to come back with my Cruton. We'll talk about some Cruton. We got some fill in the blank. We got some audience questions. We got a lot to get to, and the show is still going on here. So we'll be right back. Sons of UCF, episode number 111.
This is UCF head coach Josh Heupel, and I go 1-0 every week with my guys Adam and Mike on the Sons of UCF. Charge on, go Knights.
All right, Mike, as we talk, it's Monday, and 2 days from now, so by the time this show's out, Wednesday, is signing day. And UCF has an opportunity to ink a class here. And a lot of people are asking questions about recruiting. By no means are we insiders on recruiting, but we'd be happy to share at least what we know and kind of what we think about so far. So if you've listened in to the first hour plus of the show, we had a breakdown a little bit about the UCF BYU game in the Boca Bowl. And the one, really the two areas we were concerned about the most were secondary and D-line. Secondary more so just because a lot of young guys have to play and step up who haven't had a chance. D-line because we're just thin on the D-line. And there aren't a lot of bodies laying around that we can roll in there, Mike. And so far, if you're looking at where we are, so again, these are verbal commits only. Nothing's on paper just yet. So these are verbal commits only on sort of where UCF is at. And you can tell of the last week, Mike, they have made a huge push to try to shore up some defensive line commits. So first off, Malachi Lawrence, big time commit. He's listed as a DE right now. They think he could be a D tackle at one point. He's out of Louisville. He announced via Twitter his intention to sign with UCF, so that shores up one spot. We inked a kid from Delray Beach last week as well, so that shores up another spot. And then there's three other guys that are out there that UCF is in the mix for, and obviously nothing formal yet. But there's Anthony Hundley. He's a decommit from LSU. And Javian Gill, he's a junior college guy, so he's got a little bit of experience already. He decommitted from Tulane. He's got a couple of P5 offers, but those are two other guys that UCF is efforting on the defensive line. And then last but not least, defensive end Deontay Anderson. He's got 14 Power 5 offers right now. UCF is one of his offers. Sounds like there's some potential that UCF is optimistic here, but obviously nothing's official until it's signed on paper. 6'4" kid, 220 pounds. Again, a lot of big offers on the board for him. So at least four guys right there, Mike, that UCF is hopefully in the mix for to potentially kind of rebuild or reload that defensive line.
Defensive line is something we've kind of been lacking at for the last couple of years now, going back to the Peach Bowl. That was a very good line with Tony Garrard and Tristan Hill and those guys wreaking havoc, sacking Jared Stidham how many times that day. But that's been a weakness now for the last couple of years and something we need to improve on. I don't trust anybody until they actually sign the paper, so these verbal commitments mean nothing to me. Kids change their mind every day and respect my decision and all that stuff. They put out their messages. I'll be happy when we get them on campus. And even then, I mean, with the transfer portal nowadays, people are come and go every year. It's not the same anymore. So even if we don't sign a couple of these recruits, who knows with portal season, we may be able to fill in some holes that way.
Yeah, that's the other interesting thing about this is now you have to manage the portal side of this because obviously there will be grad transfers out there or there's transfers in general. Sounds like obviously it's not official, but most people think that the NCAA will institute a rule now where you can transfer without sitting out, without any penalty. So that opens some other things up. So it definitely could get interesting as you think about, what your options are out there. But again, UCF in the mix for a few different guys. Zion Thomas is the other defensive tackle. He's coming from Delray Beach down there. And then Matthew Alexander, he's a guy from Georgia. So certainly they've made a push here of late on the defensive line commits, Mike. But a couple of names out there on this class so far that you've probably seen or heard. And let's start with sort of the headline spot, Mike. Quarterback position, Mikey Keene. He's a 3-star kid out of Arizona. I think I just saw that he led his high school to the 5th title in 6 years or something like that. Obviously, he's probably not responsible for all those. But Mikey Keene, Mike, seems to be sort of the I don't want to call it the prize, but at least probably the biggest headline-grabbing name, 3-star kid out of Arizona. Obviously, he's getting some push from some schools. Iowa State sniffing around a little bit, so it'll be curious to see if we can hang on to Mikey.
Yeah, these out-of-state guys, we have a history now of getting our quarterbacks from outside of Florida. Obviously, the Hawaii quarterbacks that we brought in, and now this kid. And you love to see quarterbacks that come from winning programs. and he's the leader of the team. So that's a good sign right away. If they've won 5 out of 6, I imagine he's been the starting quarterback probably at least 2 years, at least 1 or 2 years. So he's got a pedigree for winning. You like to see that. I mean, people are going to knock him with only 3 stars, and he's not from Florida. But if he's a winner, he's a winner, and you got to get those guys wherever you can.
I mean, Dylan Gabriel wasn't from Florida, also had 3 stars. So that, I mean, I think that'll, that kind of stuff in the quarterback spot. I think you go find the talent wherever that talent's at. Obviously, we just dipped into the Arizona pipeline for Parker Navarro. Don't know how that'll work out just yet, but we'll see how that looks like. We have 2 running back commits, Mike, and these are interesting now because of the news that Anthony Tucker is leaving. So we have a kid named Cole Sanders Jr. He's out of Texas, a little kid, 5'11", 175, which maybe he's not that little after all, by the way. And then we have Anthony Williams out of Altamont Springs, 6'1", 195, Mike, both 3-star running backs. So 2 guys I think people like a lot. Williams in particular being 6'1", 195, obviously a bit of a bigger back. We've all kind of been thinking about, could we get a sort of a bigger, stronger, more physical running back in there? Maybe Williams grows into that. But we'll see if we can hold on to these 2 kids, Mike, with Tucker's announcement that he will be leaving.
Yeah, that's the one thing you fear when coaches do take off. They take their recruits with them. We'll see if Tucker tries to bring them over there to Utah State. Where are these kids from? They're from Florida?
Williams is from Altamont Springs, and Cole Sanders Jr. is from New Kearney, Texas.
All right.
Don't get confused with Old Kearney, Texas.
Maybe Tucker could take the Texas kid over there. I don't know if the Florida boy is going to want to go all the way up to Utah with him.
It's cold.
You got to think they have relationships with other guys here on the staff. And if UCF is the school they've had their eyes set on, then I wouldn't be worried about them leaving.
Receivers, looks like 3 in this class so far. Caden Robinson, he's only listed as a 2-star guy, 6'2", 200 pounds. Jalen Griffin, 6'3", 183, 3-star guy out of Texas. And then Xavier Franks, 3-star, 6'2", 185 kid out of Mississippi. He's an interesting guy. He committed, then he kind of softly decommitted, and he was sniffing around some other schools. And then he sort of quietly recommitted again. But he announced on Twitter his intention to sign his letter of intent on Wednesday with the Knights. So 3 receivers in this class, which again, if we're going to lose Harris, if we're going to lose Williams, if we're going to lose Nixon, obviously we need some replenishments there. I know we have some young guys, Johnson and Stretch Cradle and whatnot, and O'Keefe and Ahmad in the fold here. So kind of reloading at the wide receiver position.
All right, these guys maybe we're not going to see in action for a year or two, like we've been waiting for O'Keefe and Ahmad and these guys for the last couple of years. But it's good to have them in the stable, get them ready, get them accustomed to the system. The Heupel system, is not – it can't be easy for these wide receivers to just step in right away from day one and know exactly what the plays are coming, the way we call the plays so fast, and adapt that way. So these are names you will hear on Wednesday, and you may not hear from them again for a while. But could be big playmakers down the road.
The Alex Golesh effect, Mike, by the way, which I don't know if you saw Alex Golesh's press conference today. He may actually have better hair than you. He has really good hair.
What?
Two, yeah.
You mean a redhead?
Kind of. It happens. Right. Just check out what he's working with there. 2 tight ends came in, or will be showing up potentially. Charlie Browder, a 6'7", 235 kid out of the Carolinas. And Nathan Borboom, a 6'5", 227-pounder out of Virginia, Mike. So 2 big old boys on the tight end spot. Leads us to think these are maybe more blocking tight ends than receiving tight ends. Who knows? Charlie Browder, though, is actually a big-time basketball recruit as well. I think he got a basketball offer recently, so he's obviously an athletic kid. So the Golesh pipeline is paying off. Speaking of offensive linemen, looks like 1, 2 so far committed in this particular class. Ethan Mort out of Venice. And, Mike, your favorite player, Leander Wingard, out of Germany, 6'5", 280. He's 0 stars. So 2 offensive linemen coming in, as well as 2 big old boy tight ends.
Another German.
We're big there.
All right.
We're big there.
Yeah, the tight ends, they sound great on paper. Now we just got to throw the ball to them. Hescock's a big dude too, and we use him sparingly, not as much as we'd like to see. So who knows if we can work them in. Golesh doing this thing. These guys sound like good players. You always like to hear your tight end as a basketball player too, the Jimmy Graham type guys. So that's good. But the offensive lineman from Germany, we have one of those now. Maybe we'll build an all-German line. I don't know.
So you're talking about Paul Rubel. He put a slick little shake route. I don't know if you saw the videos that they were doing, sort of the switching where the offensive guys were playing defense and defensive guys playing offense, and they were going big against big, and it was Rubel against somebody, I don't know, but he put a little shake move and caught a little hitch route in the end zone there, Mike. 6'10" tight end, maybe.
Sure, why not?
Mike's
I mean, how tall is Hescock? Hescock's like 6'10", isn't he?
He's like 6'8".
Yeah.
So
there's some big guys.
We got some big old boys there.
Throw them up there. Just throw the ball up and let them go get it. Why not?
We went through the defensive line already. Linebackers, Mike, only 2 in this class is interesting because obviously we got rid of Mitchell, or Mitchell was leaving anyway. Wouldn't appear we have a ton of depth at the linebacker spot, but we've got Kadeem Leonard. He's a 3-star guy, a kid out of North Carolina. And then Cole Joyce. He is a 6 foot, 225-pound guy. He is out of Arkansas, so not too much in the linebacker spot. I'm not sure if we have depth there. Maybe we're looking at the transfer portal there. And the defensive back area, Mike, a couple of interesting kids we have there. We have 2 kids coming to us from California, 6'2", 195, and then another kid, Chad Brown, is 6'3", 185. So some big corners coming out of California. We'll see if those commitments hold coming all the way across the country. But that also comes in with a kid named Brandon Adams, a 6'3", 180 kid out of Georgia. So 3 of the defensive backfield recruits, 6'2", 6'3", and 6'3", respectively, Mike, coming after some sort of tall, rangy cornerbacks there, or defensive backs on the back end there.
I like to hear that. I like to have size on my cornerbacks. I don't like little guys out there that just can get jumped over all the time. These guys can go up and compete for the ball. I like to have some size out there. And going back to the linebackers, only 2. I mean, remember, this is just early signing day. There's another signing day later. So who knows how COVID has affected how these high school kids think about signing now. Maybe a lot of them want to wait till they can actually go visit some of these campuses in person. Maybe they think after a couple more months that might be available. I don't know what they're thinking right now. And maybe UCF just has their eyes on other guys for down the road or in the transfer portal, like we were saying. So still too early to evaluate the class. How many guys do you expect us to sign on Wednesday?
Well, right now we have 19 total commitments. That's not including either Hundley, Javian Gill, or Deontay Anderson. So if you do the math, you get all those guys, you're at 22. I think I read someplace, I think it was on Rivals, where maybe we can only sign 23 based on transfer stuff. So I don't know if UCF would want to fill out the entire class because, to your point, some kids may pop free in the transfer portal that they're interested in. So it is possible 1 or 2 of these guys either gets processed, maybe UCF pulls offers at the last minute, and or obviously they flip their commitments at the last minute as well. So I think the key is you see where UCF strategy is at this point, right? It's kind of rebuilding that D line and obviously going heavy in that area, loading up on some guys in the secondary as well. You don't see really a ton of guys on the offensive side. So maybe we want to hold some spots. Right now we're at 19 total commits if everybody puts pen to paper plus the other 3 that we mentioned earlier.
And who knows? Which may open up some spots too. So it's all very fluid. You just got to trust the coaches here. They've been communicating with these high school kids for the last couple of years now to develop relationships. They know what positions they need to work on the most. And I think we have a pretty good idea too that a lot of it is on the defensive side of the ball. So hopefully they land the targets that they're going after. That's all you can ask for. If you get the guys you're going for, and you don't have to rely on your backup plans.
Well, and hopefully we keep Mikey Keene because all of a sudden, Mike, the quarterback room is really thin, right? We were kind of overloaded with talent in the quarterback room, losing Daryl Mack to the transfer portal and now McKenzie to the transfer portal. Leaves us with just Dylan Gabriel, Quadri Jones, and Parker Navarro. So we certainly need to hold on to another quarterback in this class. So hopefully the Mikey Keene QB thing sticks. Obviously, probably more quarterbacks available in the transfer portal. At least you hear more about guys in the portal. But obviously some of those guys want to come in and play right away, a la Brandon Winbush kind of thing. So we'll see if we can hold on to Mikey Keene. He seems like at least another player that we've had committed, and if we can keep him in the fold, helps us from a depth perspective. But here's some couple of things though, Mike, that people are alarmed about. So let's sound the alarm. Things that you can or should or could be concerned about. Of the 19 kids that I've mentioned so far, at least the 19 that are officially committed verbally to UCF. Only 3 of them come from the state of Florida.
Wow. So they're not listening to us, is what you're saying, because that's all the UCF fans have been saying for the last 2 years, or really since Heupel got here. And you hear every time a head coach is hired at UCF that we're in the fertile recruiting grounds and we got to lock up this area, and only 3 out of 19. It's a little alarming, and to be honest. And Florida is where most of the D1 schools go to recruit, and we should be locking down a lot of guys, and especially in the Orlando area, Tampa area, the whole I-4 corridor. We should be signing a lot more guys, and for some reason we're not. I don't have an explanation for it.
It's a head scratcher. I mean, if you want to do conspiracy theories, right? Here's option one: the recruiting coordinator now. That's hard to say. Is Alex Golesh? He obviously from Iowa State. So maybe he hasn't built some Florida ties, so he's kind of sort of tapping into some of his old connections that are out there. That's one option to think about. Two, you hate to think about an option where maybe UCF hasn't built in inroads with some of the local schools. Maybe they're not they're not able to get some of the coaches to maybe help walk through prospects or share stuff if they haven't built a good strong relationship with local high schools. Again, I don't know this. I'm not reporting it. I'm just speculating. That would be another option where maybe you'd be more concerned. Obviously, it's really weird. Golesh and his availability today talked about how some of these kids have never seen the school, how they've never seen some of these kids. They're kind of taking kids at their word, or they're sort of building on relationships that they've had in the past. Makes you wonder why we picked a kid from Germany, who seems like more of a project. I don't know much about Leander Wiegand. But 6'5", 280. According to Rivals, he had no other offers. So that's kind of the thing that head scratches you, and you go, wait, why are we taking projects like a Paul Rubelt or like this kid who may be fantastic players at some point, but it is a tad head scratching. And if you're concerned as a fan about recruiting, I understand it. I also, to your point, Mike, I should be really transparent with the audience. Mike hates recruiting because, this is just things on paper, and how many times have we seen a kid's name on paper and been really excited and he's been terrible, and how many times have we never heard of a kid before and he's the best player ever. So obviously all this stuff is fluid, Mike, but a couple things to also consider. We are currently the 60th ranked class, according to Rivals, and that puts us at number 5 overall in the American Conference, behind Cincinnati, Memphis, SMU, and the Cows.
Well, that's not good. We finished 4th in the conference this year. That's middle of the pack in the American. That's not acceptable for being in Florida. Why are we not going after South Florida kids? I mean, look at our high school. Our high school is turning into a powerhouse now. Cardinal Gibbons about to play for the state championship again this week. Why are we not coming down? Everybody from South Florida seems to go to UCF. Everybody from Broward County and Dade County, all the kids love going to UCF. How come we're not recruiting kids from those schools? St. Thomas, American Heritage down here, all the schools in Miami. Remember when Godfrey came in? We got a bunch of guys from Miami. It was Godfrey and Wharton and the McRae's. All those guys came down. They all went to from Miami, wanted to go to UCF. How come we're not seeing more of that? I don't know. Are we not going after these guys for some reason? Because there's no reason not to. South Florida has the best high school football in the country. St. Thomas, I think, has more guys in the NFL than we do.
Fair.
So,
yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, man. You can't tell me that all these kids want to go out of state. I know a lot of schools from all over the country come here, but Florida, Miami, and Florida State, how many kids are they signing? I bet you more than 3 out of 19 from the state of Florida. Even the Cows.
I'd have to look that up. Well, to be fair, the Cows are only they're 56 in the rankings. We're 60, so it isn't like they're head and shoulders better than us. But certainly, it's it's interesting. To your point, there would seem to be a lot of fertile talent lying around in the state of Florida that you could go grab some guys. To answer your question, Florida is ranked 7th so far. Miami's ranked 10, and Florida State is ranked, wait for it, 44. Good luck with that, Casey. Man. But let me take a quick look. How many guys from Florida? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 15 commits for Florida State are from Florida. And then
Florida and Miami have been top 10 recruiting classes for as long as I can remember. Basically, this is all on name, and that's why I don't really get into recruiting as much, because their classes are ranked what they are because of what school they are. Alabama's always the number one school because they're Alabama. And yes, they have recruited great talent, but there have been years where Miami has sucked for a long time, and they're a top 10 recruiting class every year. How do you explain it? Is the coaching really that bad? Or the recruits not as good as these guys actually think they are? And then, of course, you get the cases where kids are rated 3 stars when they're committed to UCF. They change their mind. They go to a different school. All of a sudden, they're a 4-star. So you take everything with a grain of salt.
18 of Miami's 20 commits are from Florida.
There you go. Why are they signing so many kids from Florida and we're not? I don't know.
And let's see here. 16 of Florida's 26 are from Florida. So it would appear on face value that I didn't check the cows because no one wants to check on that depressing link. But it would appear on face value that some of the Florida schools are definitely mining more Florida talent than we are. Again, could be much ado about nothing, right? You think about our best players this past season, Mike. Mackenzie Milton, Dylan Gabriel, both from Hawaii. Marlon Williams, I think, is from Alabama. Richie Curran, I think, is from Florida, though. So you think about some of our best players. Jalen Robinson's from Texas. Jacob Harris, I don't know where he's from, actually. That's a good question. I think he went to Kentucky for a while. I'm not sure if he's a Florida kid or not. Trey Nixon's a Florida kid. Otis is a Florida kid. McCray's a Florida kid. So you think about our offensive firepower, and it's a tad mixed. Obviously, we have a bunch of guys contributing from other areas, but you would think that if we could lock down some more talent in the Florida schools, that we would be better off. Maybe Hype just doesn't think he can compete with some of these bigger schools, and so just stays away from them and tries to find the diamonds in the rough. But at some point, you find too many diamonds in the rough, it's going to be rough.
Well, I can live with a bunch of guys from Georgia and California and Texas and states like that. When you're bringing in a bunch of Germans that haven't played football much, I don't know. That's when people start questioning you, and I think it's fair.
I don't know. We should end this segment on that. I mean, Mike's assessment of bringing in the Germans obviously could be an issue, but it is a head scratcher. But let's see how it shakes out. Obviously, there's still a lot that changes. Again, these are 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. Respect my decision. No interviews, please. There's late-minute flips, and then there's the transfer portal. So we'll see where UCF goes. But if you're looking at the rankings today and you see a 60, you see his 5th in the AAC, you see he's with only 3 Florida commits on the board, I could see why you'd be concerned. But let's just see how this works out here. Obviously, again, Heupel knows what's on the line here, so let's see what he can work out. Mike, let's do a quick fill in the blank. You ready for some fill in the blank?
Yeah.
I got a couple questions for you. You've got a couple questions for me. Here's how this is going to work, though. We'll make a statement, and the other one has to fill the blank in. It's pretty self-explanatory. Even the cows could understand it, Mike. So I'll let you go first. What's your first statement that you want filled in?
Your initial reaction to hearing BYU would be our opponent was blank.
I'm okay with that. It literally was like, I'm okay with that. I initially, I was holding out a hope that maybe North Carolina would fall in our lap. I was holding out hope. Maybe I would have taken a Florida State, even though I know they're dreadful. Just anytime you can beat the Florida State team, you always take that opportunity. So I was holding a little bit of hope for that, but I was okay with it because it's a national game in this point, right? It's UCF is a brand recognition, and it's a top 15 ranked school, and so I was good with it. I feel like if on a Tuesday night in Boca before Christmas in the year of COVID. To get a team that's 10-1 to basically come back, come to our home state to play us, 2 hours from Orlando. You probably can't get a ton better than that considering everything else that's going on right now. So I was good with it.
All right. I was pleasantly surprised too. BYU is a name, and it's not a 5-5 BYU team. It's a 10-1 BYU team. They're ranked. They've been ranked all year. They've been getting a lot of hype. People have compared this team to our 2017 team. So I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I was pretty excited to hear that BYU is coming in.
All right, here's my first one for you. BYU quarterback Zach Wilson is blank than Dylan Gabriel.
Similar.
Okay.
Dylan Gabriel, I think. Right?
Okay.
I don't think he runs much. I was looking up his stats. I think he's more of a pocket guy. I think he can run, but I think in the last few games, I looked him up, he didn't have any rushing yards. He had one run for like 33 yards about 4 weeks ago. Other than that, he doesn't run much. But he can throw it around. He's got to be accurate. I think he's a taller kid, though, right? He's 6'3", so he's more of an NFL prospect. To be honest with you, I really haven't watched him that much. I hear good things about him. I was going to ask you, he's the best quarterback we've faced since who?
Let me go through a list of people in my head. I mean, Joe Burrow was the first name that came to my head.
Yeah, Burrow is the best one we played. Looking back on it, and that was the beginning of the Joe Burrow was our game.
Yeah,
he wasn't great.
He was great that game.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was Joe Montana against us.
Yeah, I mean, like I just don't think Ritter's all that. Brady White, I don't necessarily think is all that. I mean, I don't even know who Tulsa's. If Tulsa's quarterback walked into my house right now with his jersey on, I wouldn't know who he was. Pitt's quarterback wasn't any good. Yeah, I gotta go Joe Burrow.
Yeah. KJ Costello was highly touted like this guy too coming into that game, right? He was supposed to be a top prospect.
It was terrible though.
We beat him up. He didn't look good.
Yeah.
You gotta say Jordan McLeod, I guess. For the Cows.
Okay. Fair enough.
Could you play better than that game? He put up 5 touchdowns on us too, or whatever it was.
Probably the best quarterback we faced since Mackenzie Milton on the scout team would be probably the better answer to that question. Was that yours for me? Do you want me to go next?
No. Yeah, you can go. It's your turn there. Oh, no, it's my turn.
It's your turn,
yeah. The thing about BYU that scares you the most is blank.
I kind of said I'm going to say size/physicality, and that's where I'm most concerned, Mike, is if they can start dominating both lines of scrimmage. I mean, it doesn't take a football genius to know this. When you can dominate the lines of scrimmage, you're going to have a pretty damn good chance on the football game. It certainly could set up for that to take place. Obviously, we chronicled our D-line size versus their O-line size and potentially getting worn down there. So if they can control lines of scrimmage, it's going to be a long game. So we've got to figure out ways to either get pressure on Zach Wilson, sort of disrupt his timing a little bit, and we've got to make sure that we're finishing strong on our side and run blocks and pass blocks, and we're not giving up some of those silly sacks we give up from time to time. So I would say their size and their physicality.
The offensive line, I believe, is the second highest ranked offensive line in the country according to Pro Football Focus this year. That is a key to the game. But another thing that scares me about them is their dirty play. Mm-hmm. These guys are known for playing dirty. Rolling your ankle after they tackle you. Just things like that kind of scare me. I don't want any kind of serious injury coming out of this game, which we're making a big deal out of it. It is a big game for us, but in the long run, it doesn't mean much. Going into next year, I want to have all our guys healthy. I don't want them to come up and sack Dylan and break his ankle coming out. Something stupid like that. These guys got into a big brawl, I think it was Memphis a couple of years ago. I think that was actually down here in Miami.
It was the Miami Beach Bowl, yeah, at Marlin Stadium.
Because of their dirty play, and they're accused of it a lot. So it's not just a thing. If everybody says you're dirty, most likely you're dirty. So.
Let me write that down. If everybody says you're dirty, most likely you're dirty. UCF Mike quotes. We gotta start doing UCF Mike quotes Twitter account. You'd be big there. All right, here's my next one for you. If UCF beats BYU in this game, it'll mean the season is blank.
Oh. I mean, the season is not a success. It's already been deemed, I guess you want to call it a failure. Yeah, the season's kind of been a failure. 3 losses again was not anything we expected. It's not acceptable. Losing to Tulsa for the second year in a row, unacceptable. You could have handled the Cincinnati loss. They're a very good team. The Memphis game it still hurts. The way we lost, having been up 21 points late in that game, we should have won that one. We should be a 1-loss team right now this year, at worst. And the season's not a success, even if we beat BYU. But it can end on a good note. It can put us back in the rankings, I think. What would you classify the season as? Depends. Does it depend on how we win? Like if we blow them out?
Yes, it does.
People start talking about us here.
Well, I get the hindsight of writing the question, so I know how I'd answer it. I would say the season is a springboard to next year. It's kind of how I answered it. If we are able to beat BYU in this game, and that's a fair qualifier there is how much, and how if we win on a last second field goal versus if we beat them by 30, it certainly could matter. But I think it could be a springboard into next year if we're able to beat BYU. I think this is. You talked about kind of gaining momentum. You talked about the 2012, 2013 parallel seasons. It could certainly be a springboard. And so I think there's as much as it's kind of an exhibition, quote unquote, and it's whatever, one of the toilet bowl kind of deals that ESPN puts together. I think there's a lot of positive things that we can take out of it. So I think it could be a springboard in next year.
You think we're ranked after beating them?
I mean, we're getting some votes now, oddly enough. Don Williams is really creeping me out because he's voting for us, and I'm not sure what the hell's going on in the world right now. I think it's possible. Yeah, I think it's possible we could squeeze into that 25, 24 spot, right? I don't think we cracked the top 20 or anything, but I think we could get on that very, bottom rung, particularly if it's a handily won game. Again, that's what I said earlier on, when I kind of laid out my 3 Home Alone style points here, is this is our chance to get our names back out there because people, by and large, they don't talk about it. The only thing they've talked about UCF all year long is either Dylan Gabriel and throws the ball a lot, or Mackenzie Milton, I guess, too, or that other teams are trying to do what UCF already did. And that's the only context we're brought up in these days is that we used to do something 2-3 years ago. And so I think it's a good opportunity to get your name back on the stage and remind some people out there, don't forget, all due respect to some of the other schools out there, the Boise's and the Houstons, I think we kind of started this whole G5 playoff momentum thing. And I think Hype and the boys have a chance to make sure people remember that.
Last year, going into the bowl game, we were ranked number 33. This year, we're ranked number 29. Last year, we beat Marshall, who was an unranked team, and we ended up 24 in the polls. So this year, if we beat a top 15 team, BYU, I think we can definitely jump from 29 into the top 25. The problem or the question would be what the other teams at the bottom of the top 25 do. Who knows if some of those teams even play any games?
Right.
Who knows how many bowl games actually get played, COVID, and how those teams do in those games, if they win, if they lose. So we got some teams to jump. I guess we got to pay attention to some of those teams. But I think if we beat a top 15 team, we get back in. And that'll set us up for next year.
Let me ask you an honest UCF Mike truth serum question, right? Let's say that happens, right? So we beat BYU, we jump in, we end the season 23, right? And 10 years from now, whatever, we're still doing the show. We're in episode like 6,416, and we keep talking about. Remember that? Well, hey, we did finish ranked in 2020. It almost feels like that. Does that feel appropriate to say that we would finish the season ranked after everything we've done and what we've seen on the field this year? Would you be happy with that?
I mean, were you happy at the end of last year when we finished 23?
That's the thing. I don't remember, but I don't would you, if you were mounting a defense for Heupel right now, let's say at the end of 21, he's having an okay season. Would you go, hey guys, don't forget now, Heupel's had us ranked 3 times the last 3 years. Would you mount it as a defense? Or would you say, but we were ranked. Yeah, but it's really not it doesn't necessarily, indicate how the season really went.
And if you go over Heupel's career, and he's here for 8 years or whatever it is, and you say, well, hey, we've been ranked at the end of every season. That's a good point. Hey, he's never lost to the Cows. There's another good point. So even if he doesn't take us to the playoff or whatever, he's been consistent. He gets us in the top 25 every year. It's something. It's better than where we were 10 years ago.
Sure.
I mean, remember, 2010 was the first time we got ranked. Remember how big of a deal that was to all of us? Oh my God, we're ranked. Then we were out of the rankings in 1 week after losing to Southern Miss. But now we're used to it. Now we expect to be coming into. We started the last 3 seasons ranked. That was unheard of. We used to have to win 5-6 games to even get votes, and now here we are, talking about whether it's a good year if we finish the season ranked. Yeah, I guess it is a good year.
Well, hold on. So judging by your answer earlier, I asked you what you would say if UCF beats BYU, the season was blank. You still said disappointment, which means we could be 23-24, but in that thinking, it still could be disappointment though, no?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we were number 11 at one point this year.
Exactly. Yes.
After 2 games. So it's all about where you started and where you end up. Perspective, your expectations. We expected this year to be the year maybe we can crack the playoff. I mean, I don't know what the hell we were thinking. Nobody's cracking the playoff from the American. But we had a shot.
I don't know, man. I mean, yeah, we would need some things to break our way. We would need Cincinnati to stay undefeated, but we started off higher than anybody else. I think we had momentum. If we had beat Memphis, if we had beat Cincinnati, I mean, I don't want to do this because I'm just going to get back to the 5 stages of grief again. But yeah, I think we had options, but
I think we would have had life coming into the championship games.
Yeah.
We would have needed some things to go our way. We would probably need Florida to beat Alabama. We would need, I don't know, Clemson to lose again, maybe something like that.
I think it's still my turn. I'm not even sure his turn anymore. But so I actually had a question here, but we asked for questions on Twitter, and our friend Brian W. Peterson actually asked this question, which is kind of similar to what I was going to ask. So here's my phrasing of the question, Mike. In order for UCF to win this game, you'd like to see Josh Heupel make what adjustment?
Throw it to the middle of the field. Use the tight ends. What we've been saying all year. BYU's watched our film plenty. They know exactly what's coming. Mix something up. What was the game where we actually did throw in the middle of the field? Was it the Temple game? One of these games late in the year.
We tried to do it against Cincinnati. We did some nice things schematically against the Cows with a few different formations.
So, you know what? I'd like to see him. I don't want to say slow down completely. But if we do get a 2-score lead, give the defense a rest. Get up there, run it up quick, and then maybe slow it down there. Have the guys look over to the line. If we can get a nice long 7-minute drive somewhere in there with a lead, that'd make me happy.
Well, Brian's question was: now that the season is almost over, if you were the head coach of UCF football, what is one thing you want to change most for the 2021 season? So I kind of stole that same question the way that sort of Brian thought about it. But yeah, I think for me, the one thing I'd like to see Heupel do is be, I wrote down less predictable. And I don't know what that means per se, because I don't know what else he has in his bag of tricks. But I think we know if you and I have watched enough UCF football, I think we could probably call plays, and we're not smart enough to do it maybe, but design a defense to figure it out, right? You and I have seen enough. We know kind of what's coming. People who get paid to do this for a living can absolutely spot it way faster than we can. So I'd like to see him, just be a little bit more, just it's a little bit different, not be as predictable. Again, if they're different play calls, different, if they're slow down the offense and they go more, of a 4-minute style offense, if they're using the tight end more, whatever that means, just be a little bit less predictable because particularly in those moments when, we have a lead or, when our first and second, major plays are being taken away from us, if those plays are taken away, if we open up for new things, and guess what, that opens that stuff back up. So I guess I'd like to see him be a little bit less predictable and show a couple of wrinkles that can overall impact the game plan and have a different look and feel for the defense.
Yeah, I'd like to see him develop a 4-minute offense. I want to see him be able to be successful without doing everything at lightning speed. A 4-minute offense where we have a nice, comfortable lead, give the defense a rest, be able to run the ball down somebody's throat, and end the game that way. How many times the Tulsa game we had a double-digit lead, the Memphis game we had a double-digit lead, going back to last year we had double-digit leads. Be able to finish those games. You should not be blowing 10, 20-point leads in the second half of games. That is what drives me crazy. Can we just put teams away with punishing running offense and not have to rely on bombs every time we go out onto the field?
I think that's 3 apiece, right? That was my third. That was your third. Real quick, we actually answered a bunch of these, but I do want to acknowledge the people who left us some messages on Twitter. At UCF Crush was asking about recruiting. What should we expect from the early signing period and beyond? I think we kind of talked about that. Our friend at UCF MSU Clemson, still getting to those new old shows, by the way. Is BYU better than any other bowl opponent we may have gotten? I think we all agree it definitely is better than what we were looking at that point. Tony C, Kilotone 407 wants to talk about recruiting. I think we covered that. We talked about Scott wanting to potentially harm UCF offensive linemen. And then Brian wants to know about changes we would make. So thanks all for the questions. Appreciate you chiming in and giving us something to talk about. Coming up next, though, we got cows, we got picks, all that still to come. Don't go anywhere. Sons of UCF, episode number 111, coming right back.
Mike versus everybody.
All right, picking time. So Mike picks games each week. It's a lot tougher in 2020. I feel bad for Mike because every week he picks these games, and then we record this like early in the week, usually Monday, Tuesday, and then by like Thursday, I'm seeing like pretty much every game Mike's picked got canceled or postponed, and so poor Mike can never catch a break. But I guess first world problems in a pandemic to not get your games played and your picks. But Mike, some games I think you picked actually were played last week. What did your record in those turn out to be?
It's basically every week I get one game canceled. So I won again this week. The Cincinnati-Tulsa game was not played. So I had two games that actually were played. I went 1-1. I won the Army-Navy game. Army covered that one. And I lost the Memphis-Houston game. I took Houston and Memphis beat them. So 1-1 on the week. For the season, I'm 17-16-2.
Oh.
In the pool tracker, I'm 45-28. I have a one-game lead over UCF 87. I don't know if they end it this week because it's the conference championship game. Remember, we were only picking American games. I don't know if they end it this week or if they're going to actually count the American games in the bowls. I started writing this guy 87 an email this morning because I figured he had clinched it, even though the best he could do is tie me. He has a couple-game lead on UCF, MSU, Clemson. She's a couple games back, but if this was the last week, he would win. But then I had to cancel the email because I don't know if they were going to do it for the bowl games.
Either way,
so,
we need to get in touch with this person. I don't know who it is because we need to.
I see his email.
Okay, well,
his name's Daryl.
All right, we need to get Daryl in our lives. Either we need to get him on the show, or we need to get him some sort of a Sons of UCF memento here. Not that we have any mementos, but we need to get Daryl in our lives. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, the winner of this thing is going to get some cool prizes. I already got something I'm working on, and we'll give something on that. It looks like I'm going to be the overall winner, but whoever finishes next will get something too.
Yeah, humble brag. Okay.
All right.
Well, then you've got games for this week. So this is an interesting week because there's some conference championship games, there's some regular season games, some other conferences are playing. I don't even know what the hell's going on anymore.
Well, I've only picked American games all season long. This week, there's only one American game, championship game. So for the other two games, I'm doing conference championship games as well.
Okay.
All right. So let's do the music. And game number one, Northwestern plus 20.5 points against Ohio State. The Wildcats had a convincing win in the opener this year, 43-3 against Maryland. But since then, a bunch of close games. They beat Iowa 21-20. They only beat Nebraska 21-13. They beat Purdue 27-20. They beat Wisconsin 17-7. They lost to Michigan State 29-20. And they beat Illinois 28-10. Nothing impressive on that resume. And the Buckeyes have dominated some of these same teams. So they beat Nebraska 52-17. They beat Michigan State 52-12. They did play one close game against Indiana. They won by 7. But Ohio State, you know what you're getting with these guys. They've been in this game many times. They've won the last 3 Big Ten championships. They've been in 4 of the last 6 Big Ten title games. I know they were gifted a spot in the game this year. They only played 5 games, but they are the best team in that conference. I think they know that they may need some style points in this game. And they did the same thing in 2014. They went into that championship game knowing they needed to do something impressive. They beat Wisconsin that day 59-0. I think Ohio State comes out. They make a statement this week to get themselves into the playoff. They win this game easily, 51-10, covering the 20.5 points. I'll take Ohio State.
Ooh, it's a tough. So obviously, reasons known only to me. I end up actually watching some of the Northwestern Illinois game this week. I have no idea what the hell happened to me. And so Northwestern wants to muck the game up, right? They're a defensive team. The thing you mentioned of all the points is typically their opponents weren't getting anywhere near 20. I think 29 was the highest total I heard you say there. So they want to muck the game up. They want to ball control. They actually had a couple good running backs. So they want to take the air out of the ball, and they want to just control the clock here. Obviously, Ohio State wants to score. But I don't think that Northwestern can keep that offense down for that long. I know Northwestern's offense can't keep up with Ohio State. So 20 is a lot to lay here. But, I wouldn't be surprised to your point if it's not, 45, 17 or something like that. So I think I can concur with you on this one. I think Ohio State knows that people are assuming they're not a good team, and so they're going to put the hammer down.
Right. They actually faced each other in the championship game, I think in 2018, and Ohio State won that game by 21. So right around the same number this year. Game number 2, Clemson minus 10.5 against Notre Dame. This line opened at 7.5 and jumped up 3 points really quick. Remember, the Irish won the first matchup earlier this year in double overtime, 47-40. No Trevor Lawrence in that game for Clemson. That's a huge difference, even though Clemson still put up 40 points. The college football playoff, these teams matched up against each other in 2018. That was the last time they faced each other. And in that game, Trevor Lawrence, 327 yards, 3 touchdowns. Clemson won 30-3. So I think the key to this game will be if Clemson can get pressure on Ian Book. They were not able to do so the first time around. They do that this time, I think they'll be okay. The first game was in South Bend. This one's going to be in Carolina. A little more of an advantage for Clemson. I think Clemson and Trevor Lawrence win big in this one. 42-17. I'll take Clemson. I'll lay the 10.5 points. I'm not sold on Notre Dame. I know they've had a good year, but something about them I just don't buy.
They have not looked great offensively the last couple of weeks. And you're right. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence not playing. DJ Uiagalelei, I don't know if I pronounced his name right. He played. Obviously, he's a true freshman. You add in the Trevor Lawrence factor. 10 point. Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you. Clemson will take it by 10. 10 plus. Give me 38, 38-17, 38-20, somewhere in there.
Notre Dame, everybody seems to have them penciled in for the playoff. Is there a score they can lose by that would just say, okay, that was embarrassing. You guys are not deserving of a playoff spot?
Well, if they get Kevin Sumlin, I think they're in trouble. But yeah, I mean, if they lose by a field goal, they lose by 7, by 10. As long as they don't get their doors blown off, I think they still have a good shot. But that's going to be an interesting one for sure. But yeah, I think Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, I think they're going to be too much.
So both of these teams get in the playoff. Alabama is already a lock for the playoff too, and probably Ohio State. I guess that's the 4 we're looking at.
Yeah, I feel like Ohio State and Alabama are probably the most locks of the locks, right? Because I feel like both those two can probably win their championship game pretty easily. And even if Alabama happened to lose to Florida, I still think that they would get in as like a 4 spot. Yeah, it's going to come down to Notre Dame and seeing how well they play against Clemson, right? Do they play well enough to retain that 4th spot? Texas A&M is the other school that's up there. So we'll see how that shakes up. But they're not even playing the conference championship game, so you need a bunch of chaos behind that. So
would it be funny to see Alabama? I mean, I always root against the Gators, but for chaos' sake, for Florida to beat Alabama, Alabama to lose, Notre Dame to lose, and both of them still get in the playoff, it would cause a little bit of chaos. And then you get the Pac-12 teams, right? You got USC over there undefeated. You don't think they're going to be banging on the door saying, what the heck, we were undefeated and these teams are not? How come we're not getting in?
Yeah. I mean, I get the record says they're undefeated, but that's why we're doing this whole, committee thing, right? Because in theory, they haven't looked great. They had to eke out wins against Arizona and Arizona State. They haven't played a good number of teams. The Pac-12 was down. So, I mean, I guess in theory, yeah, they would have an argument, but
and Cincinnati.
And then there's Cincinnati. That's what I was gonna head to next. Is the Cincinnati find a way to sneak in here, right? If they've got Iowa State. So Iowa State and Oklahoma are playing the Big 12. I know you're not picking that game, but if Iowa State wins and the chaos you talked about takes place, and Iowa State's already a leg in front of Cincinnati. But I guess that's, most people seem to think Cincinnati has no shot to get in here, and they're probably right.
Yeah, and the committee already has used last week against them. I think they're saying, oh, they didn't play that week, so now we've got something against them.
And Tulsa, Tulsa likes to hang around and make your life miserable. We saw this. We know this. We've been here. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Tulsa doesn't hang around and make this a 21-20 Cincinnati win. It's not going to be convincing. And, they're going to be like, well, they could barely beat a 25-ranked Tulsa team. So, Tulsa's not going to do them any favors because if, we're just anointing Cincinnati as a win. But we've seen Tulsa pull a rabbit out of their ass way too many times this year.
Well, don't get ahead of me because game number 3.
Wait, do you pull rabbits out of your ass? We probably don't do that, do you?
Tulsa getting 14.5 points at Cincinnati. Like we just said, this game was canceled this week. The Bearcats have not played a game since they beat UCF. And it's going to be 4 weeks now in between games for them.
A fun fact.
They've been pretty much eliminated from the playoffs without losing a game, which we all know how that feels. Tulsa has found ways to win these close games all year long, like you were just saying. They have a tough defense. I think they can bottle up Ritter. They got Zaven Collins, one of the best linebackers in college football. 14 points, 14.5. That's way too many for me to give up. I think Cincinnati wins. They're at home, but I don't think they're going to win by that much. Maybe they win a 10-point game. Maybe it's a 3-point game most of the way. Maybe they put in a touchdown late to seal it. Something like 27-17. Maybe I can see 27-20, something like that. But give me Tulsa with the 14.5. Man. I think this game will be a close one most of the way.
Hey, Tulsa covers all day. I'd love to see them win it, frankly, but Tulsa covers all day.
Yeah, I know you keep saying that, and I'm with you because I don't like Cincinnati. But at the same time, for the big picture of things, I want Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina to go undefeated for the season and not get in the playoff. And then we're adding more teams to our side of the argument saying, what the hell? Something's got to be done. And I think the more teams, and USC, let's let them go undefeated and not get in. And then we start having all these conferences come together and say, we have to expand this thing. Something is not right with the way we decided to champion in this sport. And if it's just us, like say Cincinnati loses and Coastal Carolina loses and USC loses and none of them stay undefeated, then they're all people will use that against them. Well, you guys didn't go undefeated anyway. What's your argument? But I think if we have 3-4 undefeated teams, it could lead to change one day.
That was beautiful. That was a beautiful speech.
If I can change, and you can change, everybody can change.
That was a beautiful speech, and I think you sincerely mean that. However, until the TV contract's up, ain't nothing changing. So I think we're stuck until like 2024. 2025, but those are UCF Mike's official picks. Make sure you tune in next week and you'll find out how we did on those picks, and we'll find out the exciting conclusion maybe of the pool tracker tournament, and we'll have to figure out how to get Daryl on the show and Daryl into our lives. But next up, we wrap up with the Cows. Sons of UCF.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each week for unique yet common sense opinions on sports on the Jeff Allen Sports Talk Podcast. We will break down the sports world minus the hot takes with prominent guests and my stable of sports guys. It's sports conversation the way it should be. Search Jeff Allen Sports Talk wherever you get your podcasts or go to jeffallensportstalk.com.
This is UCF Athletic Director Danny White, and if you don't want to be the cow of the week, you need to listen to Adam and Mike on the Sons of UCF. Charge on, go Knights!
We do this each and every week. We find somebody or something that has, made us scratch our heads and say, what the hell's going on around here? We call it the Cow of the Week, and it's typically not an award you want to win, but don't you worry, we hand them out nonetheless. Mike, you get to go first as always, and I'll let you tell me who you think is worthy of your Cow of the Week.
Sometimes these things just write themselves for you. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed Saturday afternoon. I know there was no UCF games this week, but I actually had the house to myself. It was me on the couch for like 6 hours. I watched the Miami game. I watched the Florida game. And what joy I got watching those games. Start with the Miami defense. a top 10 Miami team. The U is back, blah, blah, blah. They're going to go to the Orange Bowl with a win after this game. Their defense allows almost 800 yards of offense to North Carolina. 2 running backs go for over 200 yards, one of them for over 300 yards. I think they both averaged 13 yards a carry. It was like having 2 Kevin Smiths on the same team. It's basically what I was watching. 62 points allowed. They proved the Hurricanes to be frauds that we all knew they were. They're going from the Orange Bowl to the Gator Bowl. That was just a horrific performance by their defense. They could have been a cow easily. And then the cow of the week just writes himself right in. You can't plan it any better. When we first said we were going to do these segments, this is exactly what I pictured doing. The cow of the year. Marco Wilson, Florida Gator, throwing the shoe 20 yards downfield. The game was basically over. I know it was tied at the time, but the Gators had stopped them on 3rd down. They were about to get the ball back. They would have had plenty of time to go down and kick a field goal or even score a touchdown. Instead, he gets called for a personal foul. LSU continues the drive. Give the kicker some credit. Comes out there and hits a 57-yarder in the fog. I mean, that was a hell of a kick by that guy. The Gators still had time. Went down and they missed their own kick. They would still be alive for the college football playoff. They win that game. You know, they would come into this week against Bama. They win against Bama, they're in. You know, they'd be the SEC champ, 1 loss. For sure they would get in. Instead, bonehead play of the year. Remember us getting on Alex Ward earlier in the year for throwing a helmet?
Yep.
What was that, the Tulsa game?
Yes.
I mean, time's up by 10 here in the final minutes of this game. As your team has a chance to win. We were still losing by, 10 points? I don't forget what we were losing by at that point. This is late in the game with the game on the line, the playoff on the line. What would we be saying about Marco Wilson if he did that in a UCF uniform? Oh, my God. The whole show, the last 2 hours have been dedicated to that one thing. And it kind of made me happy seeing some discipline issues over there in Florida because I don't like Dan Mullen either. He's kind of a jackass. You can see the team kind of taking after him. So I've really enjoyed this whole Saturday, and it capped off with the Marco Wilson thing. It's cow of the week. Did you enjoy it as much as me, or what?
I did. I mean, I've never heard anybody get a penalty for throwing a shoe. Obviously, I understand why it's a penalty, but it's kind of fitting. Someone put this on social media. It's funny that you see a team that has a coach that's undisciplined also plays undisciplined, and that's kind of what that was, right? I mean, I understand probably the heat of the moment, like the shoe gets in your hand. He probably wasn't assuming, like he didn't go rip the kid's shoe off and throw it himself, but obviously you can't throw the shoe. And so it was just perfect. It was a perfect end. And what's going to get lost in all this, Mike, is that kicker for LSU just banged home a smooth 57-yarder, and I'm all over here like, dude, we got Obarski.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. And how about the timeout situation there at the end? LSU didn't have any timeouts. They would have had to run him on with like 10, 20 seconds to kick that field goal, and instead Dan Mullen calls a timeout for him. I would have let him try to do it against the clock. You know, Mullen was trying to save time for himself so that he could kick a field goal in case he did make it. I don't know, man. Yeah. And the Florida kick, that looked like it was going in for a while too, and it just missed. So I don't feel bad for the Gators at all. It was a good game. It was a fun game to watch. Florida, I mean, they were moving the ball up and down the field. I don't know how many yards they had, like 390 yards in the first half themselves, but kept turning it over. So good for them. Good for LSU. That made me happy.
It was entertaining. I mean, there was not a lot of fantastic football on Saturday, right? So, you know, to your point, if you were at the house by yourself on the couch, you probably weren't watching a lot of great football because Miami was getting boat raced and weren't a lot of great games on. So at least it was a good game to end the day. And Coach O finds a way, man. You know, go Tigers. I mean, he just finds a way to make sure that they come out on top. His press conference at the end was hysterical too, by the way, when they're asking about the shoe and he just kept like staring at the camera and smiling and laughing. It certainly was the most Gatorific way to lose a game, and it feels good. So Miami goes down, Florida goes down. I have a couple of Cat of the Week options too, Mike. I don't know if you know. Are you familiar with a kid by the name of Martin Emerson Jr.? He plays cornerback for Mississippi State. Have you seen anything about him recently?
No.
So my guy here gets a pass breakup against a receiver from Auburn. and like gets up and he is just in this kid's face. He is just in this kid's face, giving him the business. They're yelling and screaming at each other. I mean, he's just basically like, "Yeah, come get some. I got you all day long. Don't you even worry about it." I'm making these words up because I probably can't say what he really said. And then they snap the ball, and the receiver goes down and burns him on a 38-yard touchdown. Like, literally runs right past the kid. It's like my biggest pet peeve is people who get up and talk trash after making what I consider to be like a routine play. You know what I mean? Like, if you stop somebody on a 4th and goal to win the game, and you want to start running around and woofing at people, I'm all for it. But when you tackle the receiver on a 2nd and 6 at the 4-yard line, like, just get up and yell and scream and stand over somebody, and the no-fly zone stuff. That's my other pet peeve, is when the ball's like sailing out of bounds and the cornerback does the no-fly zone, like he actually somehow influenced the play. So nothing's better for me than when you see a guy talk a bunch of trash and then just get burned right afterwards. And so Martin Emerson got up and he got payback, I guess, or he got paid back by a long touchdown.
I did see that highlight. I didn't remember the kid's name when you first brought it up, but I did see it. It was pretty funny.
And literally the next play, like quite literally the next play, he got burned. So a lot of good, fun, Cal-worthy stuff on this college football weekend too. So it's always fun when you have some of that stuff. We usually have some other idiotic stuff to come through, but a couple of good options, at least for Cal of the week so far. But Mike, we're down to it now. I mean, so recording schedule, Mike and I have not worked this out, but we'll probably do this this way, Mike, and so obviously we'll be at the game Tuesday night. I know typically we record on Mondays. We probably will not put a show out on Monday. We probably will not be in any sort of condition to put a show out on Tuesday. So maybe you get a Wednesday night record release situation. So we'll give you a recap of what happened, Mike. So I think that's our tentative schedule, as long as that works in with what you got working on there. Get a show out before the holiday break there. Give you some time to hang out with the family for Christmas.
Well, what's your schedule like? When are you coming down to town? You coming in Tuesday morning? We
are in Monday. We're leaving Monday morning. I'm going to try to see some family pre-football games so we don't spread any COVID-ness around. So we'll see some family and stuff on Monday afternoonish, and then obviously Tuesday's ball game day.
All right. And remember, there's a basketball game at 4 o'clock. I'll get out of work early that day. And I already sent you the memo. I think there's a little there's a guy that is a UCF alum. I guess he runs the Hooters in Boca.
No one goes to Hooters for wings. Yes.
So I could hang out at Hooters for a couple hours before the game. That'd be cool with me if you guys are done.
Well, a pregame show. Trace and I are talking to figure out a way to get a pregame show working here. Obviously, you and I will be kind of tied up, but maybe we'll work something out where Trace has the comm. You and I can kind of just kind of beam in from wherever we are and chat with Trace for a little bit. So we'll see if we can get a pregame show worked out. We'll see if that can come to fruition. Maybe live from that venue. Maybe as we're waiting to go in the stadium. We'll work something out, but obviously we'll probably wait till after the game to put out a show. That way we can talk about what happened.
Oh, I didn't know Trace was still gonna put out a show that day. All right, so that's cool.
We're discussing. We're trying to figure out if we can make that work logistically. Obviously, if it's a 3-man show and 2 of those aren't available, Trace is either going to be talking to himself or we got to figure something out there. So we will obviously that'll be on social media. So just follow us on that stuff. Sons UCF at UCF Mike 1, and we'll let you know when and if we got that happening. If you happen to be at the game, what are we 227, Mike? Is that our section?
Yeah.
Not sure.
Right at the 50-yard line.
Not sure what the rules are, if you're allowed to walk around and see people or whatever, but Mike and I will be there. Trying to check out the weather. I don't know if this is Shacket weather or not, Mike. I haven't decided yet.
Nah, I don't think it's going to be. Well, I mean, the Shacket's not long sleeves anyway.
It's not, no. It's like wearing a trash bag, though.
I don't know. I just pushed the wrong button.
You sure did. I know you tried to FaceTime me, yeah.
No, I was going to try to open up the weather. It's been
That's not nowhere near the weather.
It's let's see. It says here, high 77, low 61. So maybe a little cool in the 60s at night. It would be perfect football weather.
Okay.
The Shacket, you can wear a Shacket.
Well, there you go, Shacket.
Heupel's going to be wearing a Shacket.
Well, he is. If we were smart enough, we should have gotten some shirts made. And then we could have worn like Sons UCF shirts. But of course, we always do things last minute around here. So yeah, we didn't think of that. But yeah, if you're around, Mike and I will be there. Obviously, again, I'm not sure what the rules are around these things, but if you're near our section and you want to say hello or whatever, happy to say hello to anybody who's in and around there who cares that we're at the game.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to meet some of these guys that listen to the show. I know a bunch of them are going to be out there. So if you want to come hang out with us, I mean, I don't think we can tailgate. So that's the problem. That's why I mentioned going to the Hooters or, there's other options, but Hooters sounds like fun. I know you got the wife and kids with you, but.
They like chicken. I mean,
wings. They got chicken wings.
Who doesn't like chicken, right?
And we got to find a way to watch the basketball game too, right? It's an ESPN Plus game.
It is.
I guess we just watch it on the phone.
It is a Plus game. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could beam it on the phone there. Yeah, because I hope it'll be on in an establishment such as a Hooters.
Yeah, either that or we just hang out in your hotel room and watch it there, and then go to the game or something.
It's an option too. Yeah, that is definitely an option too. We're about I don't know. I think it's 15 minutes from the stadium. I didn't look all that up. I'm not responsible for the accommodations and lodging in my family, so we'll work that out. But either way, no matter when, if we put out a show Tuesday, Wednesday, pregame, postgame, whatever, we'll certainly have you covered. A bird's eye view of hopefully what'll be the final victory for UCF this year, cap off a really odd 2020, and hopefully go out with a nice little pre-Christmas present for all Night Nation out there. And don't forget basketball also Saturday night, 9 p.m. Florida State. So stay up late. I think that's an ACC network game. So I don't know if anybody gets that out there, but check out ACC network for UCF basketball. Been a bunch of delays. Houston got postponed. I saw Stetson was begging for a game. Obviously that didn't work out. So a couple of hoops games coming up here, and obviously the big Boca Bowl as well. But all things of that nature will be covered here on the Sons of UCF. So make sure you tune in next week. And we'll give you all a recap, and hopefully we'll say hello to you guys down there in Boca, and we'll definitely be back next week to recap it all.
Sounds good, man. I'm excited. Can't wait to see you guys and have fun at the game. So let's do this thing, man. I'm ready. Right. I wish the game was tomorrow, but I guess we gotta wait another 7 days.
A whole another 7 days, but we will be back. So everybody have a great week, and we will talk to you all next week. Go Knights.
Charge on.